Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
What's up, Ben?
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Very nice to meet you, man. So, why don't you, instead of me, why don't you explain to people what you do?
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Colossal Biosciences. We're the world's first de-extinction and species preservation company.
Yeah, and that is a wild thing. I mean, this is essentially, literally wild. This is essentially real-life Jurassic Park.
Yeah, we get the Jurassic Park occasionally. Like, believe it or not, we get that.
Of course. I mean,
I got to drop my hydrogen tablet in here.
Oh, you do those? The Gary Brecker ones, right?
I'm all
those
in.
are great.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I love those.
I just didn't want you to think it was we're going a different direction yet.
How did you get started even thinking about doing something like this?
So I kind of fell into it. I didn't wake up and say I saw Jurassic Park. I'm super stoked. I love animals. I want to go work on this. I'm just a weirdly curious person. So there's this guy named George Church. If you don't know George, you should look him up. He's the father of synthetic biology. He's at Harvard University. He's 6'7" with narcolepsy. He's just the best, right? So if you ever had him on, he may fall asleep during the podcast, but he's the absolute best. He's a genius. And I thought my background's in software and just building teams of people that are smarter than me, right? And so I was interested in synthetic biology, this idea that we could engineer life and that we could use AI and compute to make it even better. Like, how do we do directed evolution and how that could apply to like crops and animals and all kinds of stuff. So I get on the phone with George and I ask him my questions. He answers them in like 6 seconds because he's a genius. And then I start asking about all the other weird stuff that's coming out of his lab. In that process, he's like, I've also been working on mammoths and other things. I was like, wait, what? And I was like, if you had one project, what is it, this mammoth project? And then he went down this whole path about how he'd bring back mammoths, reintroduce them in the Arctic, help the ecosystem, use those technologies for conservation, use those technologies for human healthcare. And I kind of thought it was a fucking joke. I literally thought that like the smartest man I've ever met and been on the phone with was a joke. Well, then I stayed up all night just Googling George, and there was this weird mammoth through line. Whether he was in 60 Minutes or, Stephen Colbert, whatever he's in, there was this weird mammoth through line where he was just obsessed with these mammoths, and everyone kind of wanted him to do this. So I called him back the next day. 7 days later, I'm in his lab, and we were off to the races on, okay, we're going to try to go build a company to bring back extinct species.
So how do you decide what to start with?
So we started with the mammoth first, right? Because George, had been working on it for 8 years. We needed his core technologies. We thought that there was a huge application to elephant conservation. There was some ecological modeling that had been done to show that the reintroduction of mammoths back into the wild could actually have a net benefit to the ecosystem. And so that was an easy place to start. After we launched the company, it went crazy viral, and all these other folks from de-extinction research started calling us, like folks from like the Thylacine or Tasmanian tiger, which looks like a mythical creature. It's awesome.
Yeah.
The Best Shapiro with the dodo, everyone just started calling us, and then we just started expanding, our entire set.
So how does one do this? So like, before we get to what you showed me earlier, which is fucking amazing, before that, how does one do this? Like, from what I understand, you have to take the gene of an Indian elephant, which is the closest thing to a mammoth.
Yeah, let me walk through the whole process.
Yeah.
So first you have to find ancient DNA, which is pretty shitty on a good day. So the minute we take DNA out of our bodies or out of anything, it starts to degrade at an insanely rapid rate. So we definitely need to find a lot of samples. So we actually have about 109 mammoth samples ranging from 3,000 years old to 1.2 million years old, which is awesome.
Wow.
But it's also fragmented. It's like a shitty jigsaw puzzle that you don't know what the box is, and someone's stolen part of the puzzle, and then, oh, by the way, people have taken other puzzle pieces and put them in there. So there's all kinds of problems with that. So this is really an AI and compute problem. It's not as much a human problem. So you have to get a lot of samples first, and then you have to start mapping them to their closest living relative. And genotyping allows us to understand that that's Asian elephants, right? So Asian elephants are 99.6% the same as mammoths. They're actually closer related to mammoths than they are to African elephants.
Really?
Yeah, which always blows people's mind. That and the fact that mammoths were alive when we were building the pyramids, or aliens or whoever was building the pyramids. Like literally, like humans were building the pyramids while mammoths existed. And sometimes that blows people's mind because they always think of them as in this like weird, like prehistoric, like 65 million years old dinosaur.
When did they go extinct?
So the last one went extinct about 4,000 years ago.
Really?
On Wrangel Island. Yeah.
Wow.
So they've been a while. They were around for a long time.
4,000 years ago.
I know they weren't. I mean, now they appeared about 2.5 million years ago, as far as we understand. They were mostly a Pleistocene species, but as we moved into the Holocene and kind of the period that we're in right now, they existed. They existed all the way up until they had this like small genetic bottleneck on Wrangel Island.
Wow. And where's Wrangel Island?
It's northeast of Siberia.
Whoa. And they just, was it a small island? They just ran out of resources there? Like, what happened?
Well, there's a couple different theories, right? One of the theories with Wrangel Island is that they actually, there's lots of inbreeding. So there's lots of like genetic bottleneck, which happened because there's not enough different species there.
How large is Wrangel Island?
I'm not quite sure.
Can you give me a photo again, Jamie? Okay.
And so essentially, though, Wrangel Island, and then there's another island called St. Paul Island, which is also between Alaska and Russia. Also, is where they were. Those were kind of the last two places that we know mammoths existed today.
And they died out 4,000 years ago.
Yeah,
So
and now
it's
some
fairly
actually
small.
there is actually another working hypothesis that they
it's
actually
real
ran
small.
out of water. They ran out of access to fresh water on the island.
Oh, wow.
So some combination of genetic bottleneck and that occurred.
Wow. 4,000 years is so recent.
I know it's crazy recent, right?
Jamie, can you please pull up a photo of an Asian elephant versus a African elephant?
And they're actually mammoths because there's mammoths themselves. Yeah, mammoths themselves are closely related to the Asian elephant. They
Which
have
is
that,
on the left?
Yeah, which is on the left. So they have that dome cranium. They have the small ears. They have a little bit of a hump structure. Mammoths, because they had these massive, massive tusks, right? And you've talked to lots of folks in kind of the mammoth world. They actually, move their heads quite slowly. They had to have this entire ridge of extra muscle in order to do that. But one of the things that's awesome also about the Asian elephants is some Asian elephants, some of the ones that are born actually they're not mammoth-like, but they have a lot of fur on them, and they kind of lose it over time.
Wow. So are those the ones that you would find like in Thailand?
Yes, and Thailand, and then parts of different parts of India and the Indian
I
subcontinent.
actually rode one of those once with my family.
Oh, did you
I
go
don't
to
recommend it.
Did you go to one of those places that you take care of them?
Yeah.
And,
You have to like get a relationship with them. So you
Yeah.
feed them sugar cane and you wash them and
Yeah.
you play nice with them for like a while.
Yeah.
Like a couple hours. It was like at least an hour. You're just hanging out with
Yeah.
them, petting them, and then once they decide you're cool,
Then they'll
like
let you in.
They let you ride them.
Yeah.
But my whole family rode them, and I was like totally opposed to it. I was like, I'm doing it just because you guys want to do it. I would just want to feed them.
Yeah.
I just want to hang out.
Hang out with them, yeah.
It just felt weird. My daughter fell off, I think twice. My youngest daughter fell off once at least, and I was like, "Do we know that this elephant wants us riding?"
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
a weird thing.
It's a weird thing, right? Yeah.
And then afterwards, you get in the water and you wash them,
Yeah.
and everything. And I just kind of hung out with them.
I'd be cool.
They're
in
very
the-
sweet.
I don't think I'd want to ride one. I like being, around them,
I think there's a
feeding
video
them.
on my Instagram of it. Yeah, there is. There definitely is, because she was eating a log. I was like, oh, why are you eating a log?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just weird. They're so enormous, but they're really like peaceful and chill.
Incredibly smart, and they have
Yes.
incredible pack dynamics, right? So
Yeah.
they live in a herd. They've even had all these different examples where they also adopt other animals. I don't know if you've seen any of these videos, but
Oh yeah, so here it is. So this is a few years ago in Thailand, and this is an Asian elephant just chilling with this elephant. Yeah, 2018. Okay, there it is. It was really cool.
no, it's awesome.
It's just cool to be around them. They're just a fascinating animal. Just
Yeah.
the biodiversity of Earth, the fact that thing exists, this
they're-
enormous.
this enormous thing with this like robotic prehensile
Yeah.
arm. Yeah, it's crazy.
As long as you're cool to them, they're cool to you.
Yeah, they sense it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we see that in nature with a lot of animals, right? If you sense it and they don't feel like they're, being backed into a corner or fearful,
Right.
then they're not going to be around that. So
Right.
some of our animals I've been around, and they're starting to get quite large, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes.
At some point, though, you're still kind of like, they are wild animals, so you have to maintain some level of healthy distance.
Yeah. So let's just get right to it.
Wait,
So-
wait. We
no?
didn't, you want to
Okay.
finish the process?
Yeah, please.
So we have the ancient genome, so you have to collect and assemble.
Right.
And that's a lot of people just think of us in the lab, like just a bunch of people in the lab. But that's like some Indiana Jones shit. Like we're literally going into the permafrost and like collecting dead samples from the permafrost, which, you've had, John Reeves on here. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It smells like death. It literally, I mean, I guess it is death. It's just over time piled up death. And
Have you visited John?
Yeah. I visited John.
You went to the boneyard?
Yeah, I went to the boneyard.
What's it like there?
It's crazy. It's exactly what you'd expect. I didn't know John. So I'm on the board of trustees of the Explorers Club. So we take these expeditions. We did an expedition to Alaska to do mammoth retrieval, and then we're also doing some cultural studies with some of the indigenous people groups around mammoths. Like, do you want mammoths back? Is this a good idea, right? Because we try to be pretty inclusive. And they were like, oh, we got to meet the biggest landowner in Alaska, John. And I was like, okay, great. I'm excited. So go meet him. We pull up. He's in a different car, and he's like, and I think he wanted us to follow him. He's like, get in. I was like, okay. And he's a big dude.
He's enormous.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a dude, right?
No, John's a giant.
Especially after Gary Breck has been working on me. I'm a smaller dude, right? And so, like, I literally get in. I get in the car. There's a bunch of stickers, and there's one that has butterflies on it that says "Give 0 fucks." And I was like, and he's like, just move the gun over. So I move the gun over, and he goes, listen. And this is the first words out of his mouth to me. If I stop short, you hand me that gun. And I was like, I didn't even ask a follow-up question because, like, what do you do when you get in the car with John and he says, you hand me that gun? If I stop quick and I say, hand me that gun, you hand me that gun. I was like, that's awesome. And he showed me around the...
What kind of gun was it?
It was just some type of rifle.
So was this grizzlies?
I assume it was for grizzlies, yeah. Or
Yeah.
bears or, something large.
Yeah.
But then he showed me around the boneyard and showed me his collection. And he was completely... I mean, he didn't know us from anybody. He just opened up everything to us, right? And he's like, let me show you all this. Showed us his skull. He actually has a warehouse. I don't know if he ever discloses where it is, but he has a warehouse where he has some of the greatest specimens ever.
Yeah.
So it's cool. You should go. It's cool.
I do want to go. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah,
Love that guy.
he's a cool guy. And then, being in the mammoth researcher business, we're like, oh, we'd love to use some of your samples. Can we take them? And he's like, no. And he was very honest. And he told us, and that's like before your podcast with him, we kind of learned that story, right? And so that's what sucks is how like some people can ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
Because he's outside of Fairbanks, it's not the easiest place to build a biocontainment level 3 lab.
Right.
But he was open. He's like, you build a lab here, you can use whatever you want. But he's like, the bones stay here. So he's very consistent with his messaging.
Well, the whole deal with the Museum of Natural History, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
And I totally believe it.
well, it's a fact
Yeah.
now. They've found these bones in the East River
Yeah.
exactly where they told them to drop it off. They have steppe bison fragments
Yeah,
and
I've seen it.
woolly mammoth fragments, so they know that they're there.
Yeah, and I mean, you've built a relationship with John. He's just a normal, no bullshit kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's like, you stole this stuff, give it back.
Yeah.
Or he's also like, hey, if you want to come work on it, come on. Like, he's very collaborative.
It's like, what do you guys have? Like, why are you keeping that shit in a basement? Like,
Yeah.
what is that?
I mean, when we do work, outside of the expeditions of collecting ancient DNA, when we do work, we also work with museums, right? And so we go to like the catacombs of the museums, and it's exactly what you think of as like the Vatican archives, right? You go down to like sub-basement 4 of the Smithsonian, and it's just rows and rows and rows of taxidermy animals that you've never seen. It's got like little drawers and boxes, and they're like, oh, this is giant sloth poop. And I was like, I didn't know there was giant sloth poop. They're like, yes, and we think there's DNA in it. I was like, well, this is like, the card catalog of like all like dead species,
Yeah.
but it's not on display for the public. It's just in a basement.
And is it extensively archived? They know where everything is, or is there some stuff down there
I mean,
that they don't know what it is?
I wouldn't say that they are at least any museum, I think they have a lot more than they know. I don't see it in like massive computer systems because we ask for inventory lists and, like what's the shopping list?
It's been over 100 years they've been doing this, so people have come and gone.
Oh, they'll pull out drawers that have like Darwin's name on it and stuff like that.
Whoa.
I mean, that's how we did the Thylacine. We actually found in a cup about this size, we actually found we call it the miracle pup, where they shot the mother, they took the 3 joeys, the babies, killed the 3 pups, and they put one of them in formaldehyde, and we got a 98% complete genome from the first sample of that pup.
Wow.
But they didn't even know they had it. They also, on the Thylacine, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, they also found a head in a bucket. They didn't even. It was the mom's head, so we actually knew we could actually look at the genetic relation between the two. And they actually found they didn't know they had the head in the bucket. They just had a head in a bucket. They opened it up as marked Thylacine. They opened it up, and there was a full Thylacine skull in there. There's pictures of it online and everything. And we used that to get to a 99.9% complete genome because we also had the ancestry of the two of the pup and mother.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's probably treasure troves in some of these museums that aren't being fully utilized.
So if you have 98% or you have 99%, what's the process of going from that?
So
here,
there's the head. There's the head in the bucket. So Andrew Pask, who leads our in partnership with the University of Melbourne, leads our Thylacine work. And that's the head and bucket. I mean, there's soft tissue, there's teeth, there's petrous bones, which we'll talk about.
Do you buy into any of these sightings?
No, I did. So Andrew Pask, for years, he's been working on it for 15 years. He's amazing. He's awesome. He's been working on it like a shoestring budget, and that's part of the problem with de-extinction is nobody's put real capital into it until now. And he's been working on it for 15 years, and he's had people send him, poop, clippings from, hair, and all this stuff over the years. They just send it to him, and then he loves the Thylacine so much, he just sequences it, and he's like, nope, it's a dog. You sent me more dog shit. Thanks. I mean, it's demoralizing. But like when I got into Thylacine, we met Andrew. We did a partnership with them. We actually made the largest investment in marsupial research, more than the Australian government. We made the largest investment in research for marsupial development of anyone. So we do this, and then you get into the myth of it, right? So you start reading it, right? I start reading all the books on the Thylacine. I get obsessive about projects. And so I'm pretty obsessed about extinction right now. And so got super deep in it. And then I started calling Pask. I was like, hey, I've been watching these YouTube videos and I kind of think they're still there. And Pask is like, no, stop it. Don't go down that rabbit hole. So I don't believe they're
But why
there.
did he say that?
Well, because he's been testing for the last 15 years all over Tasmania, right? So not just Southern Australia, but all over Tasmania.
So samples, poop,
Samples,
stuff like
just
that.
everything, using
Right.
camera traps. And nobody's... I think that they officially say that the Thylacine went extinct in 1936. Mm-hmm. But probably into the late 40s and early 50s, they still existed. But, I mean, I think it's very unlikely that one still exists. It'd make our lives a lot easier.
Forrest really believes in it.
He does. He thinks they're in Papua New Guinea.
And because of sightings.
Yeah, he said he thinks in the western part of Papua New Guinea in the mountains.
And also incredibly remote. area.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
And the separation of that topography separates the Papua New Guinea singing dogs, which could be competitive for them for predator prey, from where the Thylacine sightings were.
What's a singing dog?
It's just another large canid that has a unique howl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
What does
this
it sound
still
like?
exists. Well, I'm sure Jamie can find a video of
I
one.
want to hear that. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
Singing dog.
Yeah.
Wow.
Papua New Guinea singing dogs.
By the way, folks, we're teasing you because this is not just theoretical.
Yeah, so
And this is what's going to get crazy.
Yeah, it's going to get weirder.
This
probably.
podcast is going to blow your fucking mind. Go ahead, Jamie.
Opera singers.
That's what they
These
sound.
rare animals
Aw.
have a knack for holding a tune, even to an exact key.
Opera singers love these.
Oh, they're so cute.
Yeah.
They're so cute. Do people keep them as pets? That looks like a dog.
Yeah, that looks like a dog.
That looks like a dog that would be
they're
at the
wild.
park.
They're wild dogs in Papua New Guinea, but I'm sure people have domesticated them.
Wow. Pretty fucking cool dogs. And
Yeah.
hanging out with a fox.
So once you have enough of that DNA, right, from all these different samples, and you can assemble it, you then have to build comparative genomic models to its closest living relatives. In the case of the mammoth, the Asian elephant. But I'm from software, so I just assume there's like the Google cloud of DNA. Like we've backed all, like we've all done 23andMe before it went bankrupt, right? So we should assume that the government or someone backed up and had kind of like the 23andMe of all species.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
Wow.
Which is insane. So
That
there's
is
there's
insane.
no backup. There's no like Noah's Ark bio vault for life, like kind of like the seed vaults. That doesn't exist. And so we're actually petitioning the U.S. government to help put a massive project together to help biobank. It's starting with just American megafauna and keystone species. So that doesn't exist at all. And so then Colossal had to go out and go build the reference genomes for all the species, like the closest living relatives for all the species that we're working on.
So this is the question. If you have, say, let's go to woolly mammoth. So if you have woolly mammoth and you have 99%, how do you bridge that gap? How do you create?
That's synthetic biology. So you never have to get to 100%, right? You need to get to probably
Synthetic biology.
synthetic biology. That's where you are using all of these different genetic tools. Probably heard of CRISPR, all these other things. Genetics, which is it breaks the DNA. It's not always the best tool. We can now actually make individual edits to when you think of the DNA double helix, right? In those rungs of the ladder, those individuals are called nucleotides. We can change the letters. Like that's how precise we can be. We can say at spot, 4,000,008, I need to change that letter. And so you change that letter. And then other times you actually synthesize big blocks of DNA. So when you notice that in the mammoth and in the Asian elephant, there's a difference. And if it's in these certain protein coding regions, in all these different regions of the genome that drive phenotypes or physical attributes, the curved tusk, dome cranium, small ears, the subcutaneous fat layer, and then hair and coat color, you can actually then engineer that into the Asian elephant, right? Because you're only really looking at that 0.4% difference, right? It's still a lot of numbers, but you're only looking at that. And so the better you can be at software and the better you can be using AI and computer models, the less edits you have to make, right? Because you're really just trying to target those core phenotypes.
Right. Are there specific genes that regulate size? Because they're larger than...
So mammoths were about the same size. They're a little bit bigger than Asian elephants, a little bit smaller than African elephants.
Oh, okay.
So there were 11, everyone argues over the definition of speciation because it's a stupid concept that humans made, not nature made. And so there were 11 different types of mammoths out there that evolved in different ways, and some of them were larger. But the woolly mammoth, the one that we were pursuing that has that woolly phenotype, it was about the size of an Asian elephant. But to your question on size, it's actually a cluster of genes. We're finding more and more about how different genes also map across all species as well.
And so there's specific characteristics that these animals have, one of them being the big furry coats. That you guys, what did you do with mice?
We made woolly mice.
See if you can find that.
The only unintended consequences was they were cute as fuck. People have lost their minds, right? I was on the phone recently with a moderately aggressive journalist, and it was going quite poorly, as some calls go.
Moderately aggressive? They were being aggressive in what way? Why are you doing this?
Some people, everyone likes
Look
to
how
fight it.
cute.
Yeah. So
my daughter actually found this online and wants one.
Yeah, so we get that a lot from
She wants
from
a woolly
kids.
mouse.
So every week, I don't have my laptop. I should
Look
run it
how
in here.
cute.
But every week.
Oh my God, they're adorable.
So these woolly mice aren't just adorable. We basically said, look, what are the core genes that drive the hair phenotype or physical attribute of a mammoth? From an Asian elephant to a mammoth. And then because we want to do this in the most ethical way as possible, there's about 200 million years of genetic divergence between mice and elephants. We didn't just want to ram mammoth DNA in there and see what happens. So we look for the mouse equivalent, right? So we look for, all of us have similar genes. And so we can try to look for those genes and then edit those genes with the data we got from the mammoth so that we're then not just putting random genes in there that could either hurt the animal or kill them, right? Or that may not even be compatible with life, right? So we try to be really, really thoughtful about it. And the woolly mice it went insane. There's people that are making T-shirts. There's a meme coin, and so we made 36 mice. They're all healthy. There's 36 mice that we made. And what was crazy about it is we're excited about it because it shows that the end-to-end process of taking data from an ancient DNA, comparing it to a living animal, making those changes, doing it with 100% efficiency. And that's really important and really hard. So we did it with 100% efficiency. Yeah, that's the
difference.
Well, so the
one
mouse,
of them, if it was in a trap, you'd be so sad.
Yeah.
Exactly. The little guy on the left, if he was in a trap, I'd be like, oh, look what we killed. Isn't that funny? Just a little bit of fur.
Yeah.
It makes you love them.
And that's the color that we think most mammoths were.
Really? They were like a blonde.
They were like a golden brown color, right? Because when we pull them out of the permafrost, they've been sitting in mud for quite some time. But if you see very fresh mammoths, like from Siberia and whatnot, like in Yakuts and other places in northern Siberia that they actually have pretty well preserved mammoths, they actually have kind of a dirty blonde meets gold meets brown fur.
Wow.
And so we did that, and now there's people that are making T-shirts that aren't us and pillows that are like legalized woolly mice. I'm like, They're not illegal. And then there's a meme account for the guy that did the CRISPR babies, that went in trouble for, making edited babies in China. Yeah. A meme account.
Oh, wow. So that's mammoth fur.
Yeah.
Wow.
A meme account, though, actually said on X that these are a bioweapon and that Colossal's made a bioweapon. So the weirdness of the woolly mouse went crazy viral. What we were trying to show is that we used our multiplex editing tools, meaning that we edited all of those genes at the same time. Most people edit one gene, let that mouse live. From the second lineage, they'll do one more gene, let that mouse live, and then they'll stack those edits over multiple generations. We've developed a system so that we can deliver all of those edits at one time, all over the genome, get exactly what we want, and then we have this what's called monoclonal screening, where we're screening the cells at the end, sequencing all of the cells, which is expensive and sounds like overkill, but then we know that none of them have unintended consequences or off-target effects in the genome, so that we know the mice that we then do cloning with, we know that they'll be healthy. And so we try to spend a lot of time, on that, because we're certified by American Humane Society. It's the oldest humane organization in the world. And if you've seen the film that's like no animals were harmed in the making of this film, that's those guys. Right. So we've ended up, so we really care about kind of not just the de-extinction efforts, the genome engineering efforts, but ensuring that the animals are healthy when they come out. And so the woolly mouse was a really interesting proof of concept. It shows that the edits that we are working on are working right, and we're getting exactly what we predicted.
Is there any plans to sell those?
No, everyone keeps asking us that. But you know what? Museums actually are now calling us saying, and zoos are calling us saying, can we display the woolly mice? They're like, it'll drive so much value. It'll teach people about, genetics and whatnot. So, it's not our business model to sell our animals or to sell, woolly mice, but it's kind of gone crazy.
Is it dangerous, though, to leave these mice in the hands of someone, even at a zoo, who decides, I want more of these?
Yeah, if we ever put them, I think more likely we'd put them in a museum that needs to be free, like the Smithsonian or something like that, from an education perspective, versus something that's more attraction based. I think we do it more in the case of a museum.
Do you plan on keeping this batch alive?
Yeah, they're going to live out their normal lives, but
you're not going to make new ones.
We may make new ones.
What if they breed?
These won't. They're all separated. They're all separated by sex. So we're not gonna have like a Jurassic Park moment where they change. They're all separated by sex. But if Jamie finds a picture of their habitats, they actually live. They live a couple years, but they don't live like traditional lab mice that live in like a small little cage and all on top of each other. They actually live in pretty sweet digs that we made for them. That are all like we spared no expense.
Cool little house.
Yeah, and they're big, and we put fun stuff in them to play with like this. And what's been crazy is we only named 2 of them. And we named them Chip and Dale because we people were asking what the names were, and I was like, Chip is the only thing that I could think of at the moment. And now even on X, people are like, we need pictures of Chip. Where is Chip? We've only seen pictures of Dale. And there's like these incredible internet sleuths that are like, that's not Chip, that's Dale. We need a picture of Chip.
Yeah, you can't get involved.
Yeah, so we've just
don't get involved with those people.
We've not leaned in. Yeah,
you cannot.
We're excited. They're excited, but we just can't. We're busy.
So this is a new thing. The woolly mouse is a new thing. Mm-hmm. Is there any talk about doing other kind of new things?
So it's more of a proof of technology. I think that the mouse model, because it's a 20-day gestation versus 22 months in elephants, it's a great way to test phenotypes. Because with a mammoth, you have 3 ways to test if you got the edits right. 1, you can do molecular tests. You can do DNA sequencing to see if it worked. 2, I guess there's 4. 2, you could grow a mammoth and see if it looks like it, but that's a lot of work in 22 months, like a lot of gestational time, a lot of money. I think there's a lot of risk in that. The third, and this is a little weird, we created what's called induced pluripotent stem cells. So we created cells that you can then turn into any type of tissue. So we actually do have mammoth hair follicles growing in a lab. So we have hair growing in petri dishes in the lab, which is pretty cool. And if you come see the lab, you'll get the whole Willy Wonka tour of it, which is pretty cool. And then the fourth way is mice, right? Because it's like if we can then engineer them into mice, we can see immediately within 20 days if the edits were working, if there were any unintended consequences that would be detrimental to the animal.
Wow.
So we'll probably make more iterations of the woolly mice. The Thylacine's closest living relative is the fat-tailed dunart, which is a mouse-sized marsupial, and it actually gestates in 13 and a half days versus 20 days. So there's no reason to do it in mice when you can do it immediately in the model species.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you make the decision to do what you ultimately did, what you showed me before the show?
We're working on the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and the dodo for different reasons. We work with a lot of different private landowners, governments, and indigenous people groups. And a project that we announced through our Colossal Foundation about 2.5 years ago is doing a population genomics map. We talked about biobanking a little bit. So we want to understand from the bison that are still here in America, what's genetic diversity, what's been lost, what's the number of inbreeding. So we go through this whole process to try to understand, and then we were giving a report back to MHA Nation. Chairman Fox, it's one of the largest indigenous people groups in the United States, one of the largest tribes based in North Dakota. So we're giving them a report out on this. We went to their nation, wanted to share this, and then we're curious. So we said, what other projects would you work on if that we could do that's helpful outside of helping the bison? And they said that we needed help with wolf conservation. They brought up that. They said that we needed help with more bison conservation. They said if we could do stuff around eagles and fish. And so we kind of got that feedback. And when Chairman Fox was walking me through their cultural heritage museum, he actually stopped on this incredible picture of a white wolf, and he said, that's the great wolf. And he talked about the ancestral knowledge that was passed down and that's been lost, and how many people believed that it could have even been a direwolf. And I was like, from Game of Thrones, that's cool. I love the show. That's interesting. So I did that. We talked about that. And then 3 months later, I was in North Carolina, and understanding that for a completely different meeting around financing. And in that meeting, the red wolf program came up. I don't know if you know anything about the red wolf, but it's kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
It's the only endemic wolf to America. That's only endemic to America. It's a red wolf. It's beautiful, and there's like 15 left in the wild. With massive loss of genetic diversity, massive bottleneck. And I was like, wait, we're supposed to be this country of innovation. We can't save our own. When you think of like the American West, right? You think of wolves, you think of like, eagle soaring, you think of like trout, bears catching trout, you think of bison. The thought that we could lose one of these amazing icons, we have to do something about this. We have to figure something out. And so we put that kind of on the list. And then in a weird series of events, we've had all of these kids over the last 3 years and teachers and parents sending us pictures of woolly mammoths or dodos or thylacines. Like we get like boxes of this every single week, which is pretty cool. So we're going to make a Colossal Kids Corner at our new labs. And in that, we've had some Hollywood talent, like Tom Brady, others that have invested in the business. They're just excited about it. Most of them learned about it through their kids. Kind of like with the woolly mouse with you. And so everyone's excited about it. And then we talked again to MHA Nation. They brought up the direwolf again. And so we thought maybe there was an opportunity to bring back an American species, because direwolves were only found in the U.S., a little in North America, but predominantly in the United States. Coastal United States. And we thought if we could do something that could bring back the direwolf, also help wolf conservation and bring people from like sci-fi, fantasy, and kids more into science and into the conversation around conservation, we thought it was a cool idea, but we had no idea if we could pull it off. Is
there dead direwolves that were trapped in permafrost, or is
no? Most of the direwolf skulls out there. There's thousands of them in La Brea tar pits. So if you go there, they have this beautiful wall, but because of heat and acidification, there isn't anything that's protected. Like there's nothing you can get from that. But about 6 years ago, a group, including Beth Shapiro, our chief science officer, sequenced a tooth that was found in a cave, just a single tooth, right? And in that tooth, they actually found they actually got 0.15x or coverage of the genome. So they got about 15% of the genome. But that's not really enough. You need to get up to about 10x, meaning that you can read the entire genome about 10 different times, so that even if there are gaps, you understand enough of the core kind of coding regions that you could bring back that animal. Or
is this done by AI?
It's done by AI and software, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we built, part of our business model is building technologies to solve these really complicated problems. They're much harder to solve than just solving them for existing species. Open sourcing that for conservation for free, but then also taking those technologies that we can monetize for humans and spinning them out. So our first computational analysis company was called Form Bio, and we actually spun it out of the business.
So you have this tooth, you have 1.5.
Yeah, 0.5, so 15% of the genome.
Okay.
And so I went to Beth, who was only an advisor at the time, and said, could you resample the tooth? And she's like, it's like, half an inch long. She's like, it's destructive sampling. Like, it's going to ruin it. I was like, well, could we scour the other museums and see if it's even possible? So we lucked out, and that tooth's 13,000 years old. The skull itself is 73,000 years old, not exactly sure. But it was found in a riverbed. And it wasn't found in a riverbed at the mouth of a cave. So it wasn't found like in the permafrost, but it also wasn't found in like heat and acidification. So there's a bone in all of us called the petrous bone, which is insanely dense, and it doesn't change a lot from after you're born. It's a great DNA storage, better than teeth, better than anything. It's like in the inner ear kind of head area. And so we got permission from the museum to very carefully drill into the underside of the skull and remove the petrous bone to see if we could get DNA. And we got really lucky. Between resampling the first and the skull, we ended up getting about 13 to 14x coverage. So that's more than we needed to potentially bring back the direwolves.
And then what'd you do?
Well, and then we got a knock on the door and it was no. So we took that DNA.
Can I ask you before we even start with this?
Yeah.
The aggressive reporters is it you're playing God? How do you have the right to do this?
So it's been a journey. Okay. So the journey that we've had is when we started the business, we didn't have any scientists. Like, we just didn't, right? They're like, this is tech bros wanting to see cool animals, and they've only got $16 million in funding and they don't have any scientists. Ha ha. So that was phase one.
Right.
And then we're like, as an entrepreneur, my job is to hire much smarter people than me.
You smoke cigars?
I do not. Gary's got me on quite a kick. So
health kick?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
cigars aren't bad for you.
Well, I'm not saying they're bad for you. I'm just saying that
allegedly.
Yeah.
I don't care. This is the last of the things that I partake in that are probably bad for you.
Yeah, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Everyone's got their vices.
I like a little cigar. My question, if I was going to grill you, if I was a reporter, it'd be like, what right do you have to invade the natural process of nature and to inject your curiosity and your ability to create new life?
I think that we've become the apex predator on this planet, and we inject our curiosity and choices every day that we overfish the ocean, we overhunt something. In the case of the thylacine, the Australian government put a bounty on its head and killed it off, right? And every time we cut down the rainforest, every time we drink hydrogenated water, we are, playing God on some level, right? Humans are very good at changing the natural flow of things. Mm-hmm. Now, the good news is that there's been a lot of work around ecology and understanding what the impacts to rewilding can be. And so it's been really, really helpful for us to understand, one of the most successful rewilding programs of all time was reintroducing of 14 or 15 wolves back into Yellowstone.
Right.
And looking at how the ecology of the system completely changed. Like, it changed the shape of rivers, because the elk population were just, they were getting fat, they were getting lazy, they weren't migrating. The sick and the old and the weak weren't getting killed off. Right. They were spreading disease. They were eating all of the willows and everything along the banks. So therefore the beavers went away. Beavers are like the most super, climate impact animals that probably exist, because they make wetlands. They make they cause the rivers and ponds to get deeper, so it allows different types of fish and different types of animals. So you have this thing called trophic downgrading, and you have this trophic cascading effect when you reintroduce these species.
That documentary is fascinating.
It's so fascinating.
How wolves change rivers.
Yeah.
I know people that lived in Montana before the wolf reintroduction, and a lot of people don't like that the wolves are there, but most of them are elk hunters that were used to something that's just outrageously overpopulated. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
But they were telling me that they had so many elk that were living, they had such a large population versus the actual resources that were available, that they had all these crazy hunts that were available over the counter. Like, you can hunt cows in the snow. So in the middle of the winter, where they can't move good, you can just pick them off in the snow, because they were just trying to cull the population. They were trying to diminish them.
And that's not good for the elk population.
No, it's not.
Not only good for the ecosystem, but it's not good for the elk population itself.
Right. I have a good friend who lives in Colorado. He has a ranch in Colorado, and we were at his place approximately 2 weeks after they reintroduced wolves. So they actually reintroduced wolves on his property.
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't know it was going to happen before it happened. And all the people around there are ranchers.
Yeah.
So already these 5 wolves that they've reintroduced, he said, have killed over a dozen cows and calves. So the problem is they've killed elk as well. In fact, I took a photo of an elk leg that we found on the ground that the wolves had killed. I'm not a big fan of people getting to vote on whether or not you should do something with wildlife. I'm a big fan on having real wildlife biologists assess situations. And in the case of Colorado obviously borders Wyoming, and Wyoming has wolves.
Yep.
Wolves were making their way into Colorado already, and they are protected. The problem with reintroducing them is you're essentially asking a wolf that doesn't know the territory to start killing things in that territory.
Yeah, or to stop at a imaginary border it doesn't exist.
There's no border. They go hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Exactly.
But the idea that you're doing this, and you're doing this where there's ranches, is crazy. And in Colorado, particularly stupid, because the first batch were literally animals that they had captured because they were killing wildlife.
Yep.
So they moved them from Oregon to Colorado, where they started killing wildlife. Yeah, but they're killing. Excuse me, I'm saying wildlife. What I really meant to say was animals, agriculture. Mm-hmm. They're killing domesticated cows. They're killing these calves, and they're having a real fucking problem with that.
And it is something that needs to be continually monitored. That shouldn't just be on some random vote of how you feel about it, right?
You just can't let people vote on that.
No,
too many people live in these high population areas.
I couldn't agree more, right? And so, we as humanity, if you look at the third leading cause of death of elephants, it's human-elephant conflict, right? We have to figure these things out.
Yes.
We don't want degraded ecosystems. We don't want to lose species, but you have to do this in a very thoughtful and measured way, right?
Yeah.
With Yellowstone, they're like, this is big enough ecological preserve. We're tagging the animals.
Yeah.
We're going to walk and measure it. I don't think that it's safe or smart to put any, not just predators, but also large herbivores in these heavy population dense areas. We have to understand that some of these areas not are lost, but have already been changed for a different reason.
And they've achieved homeostasis. They've achieved a balance, right? Which is the big issue with Colorado right now. And it's going to be the big issue whenever you reintroduce an animal that used to be there and is no longer there. Mm-hmm. And I think in the case of Montana, I think you're right, and I think that there is an argument that maybe the wolves being there is better. Obviously not if you're a rancher.
The Colorado stuff is completely going to destroy all of the stats. So pre-Colorado, right? So I'm talking about reintroduction into Montana, reintroduction into parts of Canada, reintroduction into Yellowstone, the red wolf, which is a very small population in North Carolina. There's been less than 5 confirmed fatalities in all of North America in the last 100 years.
You mean humans?
Humans.
Right, and are most of them in Alaska?
Most of them are in Alaska or in Canada. And then it's before Colorado, so not saying I don't know if the data has, I don't think it has the latest from Colorado, but it represents 0.02% of deaths associated with wolves and cattle and livestock, right? And all livestock, not just cattle. And so the problem is when you go out there and you have a maintained balance that people can understand, and governments actually give subsidies to the ranchers when they get killed by the wolves. So that I think that is a good program because you have to be fair to the people that are actually ranching. But the problem is when you're not as thoughtful with a rewilding program and you're not as measured as what they did in Yellowstone, and they start encroaching in these areas, then the stats are going to go crazy. And once the stats goes crazy, then you're going to start looking to the animals that are the problem, but it's not the animals that are the problem. It was the decision that we gave that power to the masses that were really not informed to make that decision.
Exactly. The problem is people just have these ideas wolves are beautiful. They're amazing. We all love wolves. It's an incredible animal. I'm so happy it exists. Don't put it near where there's a ranch.
Exactly.
You can't vote on that if you live in Denver. That's crazy.
Yeah, if it doesn't affect your livelihood, if it doesn't affect the risk to your animals or your family, you have to be mindful of that.
There's also, they're getting a very skewed perspective because the governor's really interested in it and his husband is really interested in it. His husband apparently is the one who really wanted it to happen. And, you have a mandate, so you have to get wolves out by a certain time. And when you're doing it, the only wolves available are wolves that kill livestock, and so you're like, fuck it.
Yeah, it's just not. You have in a lot of the project that we'll probably eventually talk about is we brought in a lot of the teams, so many people that have been on your show, that know how to do the rewilding the right way over time.
Okay, so this is what we'll just get to it. You made a fucking direwolf.
I didn't.
You
our
guys.
team, our incredible team, made 3 direwolves so far.
Let's see the photos. Jamie, bust out some photos. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourself because this is truly fucking crazy.
Yeah,
That's the pup.
Yeah, so this is so that's actually Romulus. We have 2 boys, Romulus and Remus, founders of Rome, and then we have Khaleesi, who's the new girl. So this is Romulus and Remus. So funny story about this. So Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings.
Jamie.
Peter Jackson from Lord of the Rings was actually one of our investors, and he has this huge museum in Wellington that he's building for all these movie props. And he's like, I was sitting in Peter's house with he and his partner Fran, and I was like, I showed him the video of them howling. He started tearing up. He goes, "This is the first time I've heard a direwolf or anyone's heard a direwolf in 10,000 years." He physically, emotionally got chills and started crying. And then he's like, "Well, I do have the throne." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I bought the throne last week at auction, at a private auction from like Sotheby's or someone, right?" And so he did, and it just happened to be where the wolves were doing their vet checkup. Like, talk about cosmic coincidence, incredible, right? And so, what you don't see in this photo is you don't see the fact that we have American Humane Society there. We had 3 veterinary people. We had 6 people from our animal care
When you
team.
say checkup, you don't vaccinate these little guys, do you?
They do because of viruses from that they can get from the soil. At 8 weeks, they do get basic virus. They do get basic vaccines.
Oh, were you concerned about that? I mean, you have this animal that you're just...
Yeah, so these are staying on, these are not going back into the wild, right?
Right, not yet.
Right now, they're on a 2,000-acre secure, expansive ecological preserve with 24/7 care. We have an animal hospital that we built.
Wow.
People always are like, "You guys raised so much money." And I was like, well, because we didn't just spend it on the labs. You have to spend it on the animal care, the facilities, and whatnot.
Let's see the photo of the actual grown ones because they're fucking nuts.
So this is Romulus and Remus playing in the snow on the preserve when they are 3 months old.
So at 3 months, how big are they?
3 months, they were north of 45 pounds.
Wow.
So
Look at that face. God, they're so beautiful.
they just get like, as they've aged, they've just got more and more beautiful.
So let's go to the adults because the adults have crazy characteristics that you were saying that you didn't even know they were gonna have.
We didn't know, right? And so we ended up getting a.
Is this a full grown one?
No, they're still 5 months old, so they're 80 pounds at 5 months. So wolves typically grow 12 to 14 months, so they're not full grown yet.
Wow. And how big is it already?
80 pounds, about 5.5 feet.
In the mane.
Yeah, and so a couple things about the wolves, Jamie, if you go back, yeah. So we didn't know this, right? We knew that they were a Pleistocene wolf. We knew that they existed and went extinct about 12,000 years ago, when a lot of megafauna went extinct, like during kind of that Younger Dryas kind of cooling period. They went extinct as well, right? And we knew all we know because all we have is we don't have frozen direwolves or frozen samples. We literally just know from skeletal remains that they were 20 to 25% larger. They were stockier. They probably weren't as fast based on kind of their body weight as a normal wolf would be. But we knew that they had thicker skulls, a larger cranium, and whatnot. And we assumed that and we did find this out in the genome, which is pretty cool, that they were white. Because there's like this misconception for a while that they were red because some scientists wanted to make a paper and assume that they were red so they get their paper.
Doesn't it make sense for natural selection? I mean, they're an Arctic hunting animal.
Yeah, and they have this beautiful, we didn't know this, they have this beautiful like mane-like quality to them. And when they're babies, you saw a couple of pictures, their fur almost feels like polar bears. It's crazy.
Wow.
Is
so
it
cool. Like polar bears and it's hollow, or is it not?
It's not. It's like typical wolves, but it's incredibly thick. It grows in kind of these clumps, but then as they've grown in, they've started to get this kind of like mane to them, which is incredible.
The females as well?
Well, the female, she's only 6 weeks old, so it's too soon to tell. So if you keep going through a couple other photos, yeah, I mean they're just beautiful, and it's funny. Someone actually said they on our team was like they almost look like Shetland pony wolves at some point, right?
Right.
But
They're so stocky.
They're stocky. They're thicker. They are. I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. So this is Khaleesi, who looks like a baby,
look at that little face.
and we nailed it. We named her.
Can we hear it? Let me hear.
We named Khaleesi for George R. R. Martin, obviously,
Who's
an investor in Colossal.
Oh, wow. Aww. Nature's cute little murderers.
Well, everything in nature murders something, right?
Yeah.
Like we murder.
Well, cows murder grass.
Yeah. And people are now saying you can hear grass and other plants like scream now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they scream.
yeah. So I guess we all are bad. So.
Life eats life. This
Yeah.
is I mean, that's the reason why plants have chemicals to dissuade us from eating them. What are they eating there?
So they love to chew on horns in this state. So we have different phases of we built a 145-page animal guide. These are actually different horns from different elk and other species that we're putting out there.
And they chew on it like
they just love
like
them.
a dog does.
Like a dog does, right?
So are you letting these animals kill things, or are you feeding
So
them?
so we're feeding them still. So they eat a combination of bison meat, horse meat, and
Do you plan on letting them kill things?
So we're
eventually?
just about to introduce carcasses to them. So giving them part of a carcass, letting them feed, building in that dynamic between the two brothers for now, and then and they are starting to exhibit some hunting behavior.
Are you going to let them hunt?
I mean, they are on a seemingly wild 2,000-acre preserve with just them, so they do have the ability to hunt on that preserve, but they're not doing it yet. They're starting to exhibit the original, the first inklings that it will trend toward that. But we want them to live. We want them, and we're going to probably make 2 or 3 more. We want a solid little social pack that we can monitor, that can live a seemingly wild life, that we can understand more about them.
Wow.
It's cool. But the other thing that's equally cool to it, going back to the Red Wolf story, can you...
Which is crazy to me that you have reignited these 10,000-year-old hunting genes.
Yeah.
That they're starting to
including
exhibit.
size. So we understand more about we looked at what genes made really a direwolf, like what was separated. And the beautiful thing for us is that we had a 13,000-year-old tooth and a 73,000-year-old skull, so we could actually understand the genetic distance. With that much genetic distance between them, we could actually understand what truly was fixed and conserved in the direwolf genome and what wasn't just population genomics, right? If you and I are 50,000 years apart, there's a lot of different mutations in that time period. But if we can then really say, okay, what made Ben and what made Joe? Oh, here's the overlaps. It allowed us to really understand that, which is pretty awesome. And
it's just fascinating that the behavior characteristics are kind of baked into
They're
those
baked in,
genes,
yeah.
and they just were dormant for 10,000 years, and now these things are waking up.
And so
like,
I was in, because I bottle fed Romulus, and Romulus was partly raised with me. I could go out to the preserve. I'd check on him quite frequently. It's in the northern United States where we don't say where it is, but mainly because we're for not just the animal's health, but for human health. Ever since we launched the woolly mouse, we've had very excited people just show up at our labs are not open to the public, and we've had lots of people just show up wanting to see the mice, and so. Showing people too much of the preserve, we're always very, very nervous about. We scrub all the videos and whatnot to ensure that no one can pick it out because we assume people will be moderately excited.
Oh yeah. Oh, the internet sleuths will try to find you.
Yeah. So we've done. I'm not trying to challenge them, but we've done everything we can to protect it.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, you have to. Some dude from Saudi Arabia wants a wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody wants a dire wolf.
We get a lot of. We already get a lot of weird calls. But the other,
I bet you
the
do.
other thing though,
someone
is,
with deep pockets.
Oh, we get.
Make me a dire wolf, my friend. I have everything
They have
in
everything.
my collection.
We get a lot of weird calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, from people that are like.
There's people that have private zoos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
enormous.
In India.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have that family has like the largest private zoo and preserve.
It's just so wild.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. Well, Texas's history with animals, right?
Yeah.
There's more tigers in captivity in private collections
in Texas than in the wild.
Than in the wild of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I was in the I was in. So we of the 2,000 acres, we have a subsection of it that's about 6.5 acres, where we have an animal hospital, a storm rescue shelter. We have a couple of natural dens that we've built for them, as well as an animal husbandry area. So that way, when we want to take photos of them or videos of them or do blood tests, they're in a seemingly more contained area. And it's funny. 2 weeks ago, I was up there and I was actually sitting on those logs in one of those pictures, and Remus came. Romulus, who I spent the most amount of time with. Remus came pretty close, and I was able to touch him again. But I thought at that moment, and then he kind of skiddished away. I was like, that's the last time I'm touching Remus. Like, what am I doing? And I mean, don't get me wrong.
What
I had
if he
our
decides
animal.
to eat you?
Yeah, I have animal care teams there and everything. And they have been there's some level of habituation between the care team. They really know and love the care team, but they're still wild animals, right? And so
They probably hunted humans.
we don't know, right? But the rise of kind of going back to their extinction, the rise of the change in kind of this Younger Dryas period, and the massive, some of the stuff that there's like several different prevailing theories, one of which is human predation, right? That like the rise of humans led to the extinction of the megafauna. That's kind of, I think the answer is probably a combination. Could have there been an astrological event? There's starting to be more and more data around that.
I'm sure you've seen Randall Carlson talk about
I've
this.
seen Randall Carlson talk about it, Graham Hancock talk about it, and they just got the shit beat out of them.
Yeah,
for
but not
talking about it.
anymore.
Yeah,
the
now
Younger
it's starting
Dryas
to
impact theory is well respected now.
It
happened.
Yeah, and it definitely also happened in kind of a regional sense, right? Because you see different, which also tracks to the theory, right? So not only do you have these different layers that you can prove from a sedimentation perspective, but there was also a massive glacial lake and some of the glaciers up there that got rapidly liquefied,
right,
that then dumped in the ocean, that also changed ocean patterns. So you went from a period, in that kind of transition from Pleistocene to Holocene, there was this period of insanely accelerated cooling.
Do you know how Randall came up with that idea before it was brought to? Like, his idea is that it was an instantaneous melting of these caps, some sort of immense cosmic event, and millions and millions of trillions of gallons of water at an insane rate ran through the land and just carved deep gouges into the earth. He was on acid. He was on acid, and this idea came to him.
Some
he was
weird
looking
idea.
out over a ridge. He was looking at this enormous gorge, and he realized the gorge was formed by water rushing at an insane rate of speed. And then he started noticing that there's these huge boulders that are just out in the middle of nowhere that were just moved by this immense amount of water. And then the way the ground, the features of the ground looks like the features that you see on sandy beaches when the tide rolls in and out. And it's like, this is great, and it all tracks. It tracks all over the world.
It's like those. It reminds me of those stories where they show people like the side of the Sphinx, and they're like, "Oh man, that's a lot of water erosion." And then they like flip the photo, and then you see the head of the Sphinx. Like, that's not water erosion. And you're
It's
like,
Dr. Robert Schoch from Boston University.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him. He was
cool.
the first guy to propose this. He's like, this is thousands of years of rainfall, and we know that the last time there was rainfall like that in the Nile Valley was 9,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is really screwy in terms of like, what is the timeline that this stuff was actually built, and are we just assuming because we've decided that it's 2,500 BC that that's it forever, and no one wants to let that go?
Well, that I'm not a scientist, but and I don't come from academia. I'm just an entrepreneur that knows how to build teams of smarter people than me, and I find cool shit interesting, and I try to work on it, right? And what's crazy to me is the academic system, once again, non-academic, I'm sure I'll get crucified for this, but I don't read the comments. So it doesn't really matter.
Read the comments.
I don't read the comments.
Ben.
I don't trust me. I don't read the comments. It doesn't.
Good for you.
I sleep quite well.
Nice.
But the academic. So we have 95 of the top scientific advisors in the world, Nobel laureates and whatnot. We fund 17 academic universities, right, all over the world. We fund 40 postdocs, right, all over the world, right, and they're doing this. So we're very integrated with different ideas from academia and these scholars. And our top people that work at Colossal came from academia. So I think we try to be very academically friendly, but they live in this world, this super kind of like fortune and glory world where it's like, It's a popularity contest. If someone has a paper, because their entire motivation is publish or perish. So one of the other things that people bitch about is they're like, you guys don't write scientific papers for every single thing you do. It's like, we're not an academic university. We're not allowed. I don't have to write a paper on anything ever. We do a couple here and there because we want to share our knowledge with the community, right? But we get this feedback of like, if we wrote a scientific paper for every single thing that we did that went through peer review, like we would have 3,000 scientific papers and no mammoths ever, right? Because we'd just be sitting around writing fucking papers all day long.
It's interesting because they want to impose their idea of what you're supposed to and not supposed to do.
Well, they want to impose their idea that they've already established in any change to that establishment. So in addition to the public 95 scientific advisors, and these are some of the top women and men in the world, right? That fall in all sides of the political spectrum, all sides of every single spectrum out there. We have another probably 40 advisors. They're like, we love you. You can't say anything because if I submit it, we know these other people don't like me. If I submit a paper, and we totally agree with you and we'll help you. But we submit a paper, they judge my paper, it gets rejected, then I don't get my grant, so then I can't continue my research. I have to fire my postdocs. So it's a complete scam of a system, right? And so we went through this phase where it's like we didn't have enough scientists, we didn't have labs, we didn't have money, we weren't doing anything for conservation. So we went through this whole like philosophical perspective of all these things that people threw at us from the scientific community. And some of our biggest people that hate us are people that we denied their funding.
Of course. Well, the problem is not the scientific community. The problem is weak men. It's this what you see in these squabbles, these like ultra personal squabbles, where like horrible vitriolic statements made about people. Like
they're just not happy people.
Exactly. It's the same problem with all of life. It's these bitchy little people, these bitchy little monsters, and they have taken over something that's incredibly important. And their work, these bitchy little people, their work is incredibly important.
Yes.
But at the core of their being, they're a bitchy little person.
And they can't, and that is why we don't have flying cars, we don't have mammoths, and until Elon, we were not going to live on Mars, right? And so, like, we didn't have, like, I think
it takes time.
But it doesn't come. But also, academia is really focused on point solutions, not full systems, right? So if you want to go to Mars or you want to bring back a mammoth, you have to design the entire system and you have to innovate across everything.
Right.
Whereas in academia, you are only incentivized to get that piece of paper and get that approved.
Well, it's also you're dealing with grants and enormous amounts of money that gets donated and given to these institutions, along with a whole ideology. Like, it's not just as simple as let's follow data. It's all got to be attached to this very left-leaning, almost preposterous in some aspects, ideology.
Yeah.
And everyone has to say things as a fucking scientist that you know is not true.
You should just follow the scientific method.
Exactly.
I'm not a scientist, but we should just, and guess what? When new data shows up that changes your old data, you shouldn't get mad about that. You should celebrate it.
Exactly. Well, also you have to look at all data. Like, I don't want to get into this, but like if you have academics who are legitimate scientists and have published papers who are telling you that a man can be a woman, and which is fine in terms of like who you are. But now when you're having them compete with women in sports, you've entered into nonsense land, and you're the person we're counting on to be the most intelligent person on the subject. You're trapped by an ideology that you're now ignoring biology in favor of sociology.
I just wish we could get philosophy. We separate philosophical perspectives from science. One of the things that we fight about all the time, because it's like once we got the scientists and once we got the money and once we proved that we are the most advanced, synthetic biology company in the world, once InQtel, which is the funding arm of the CIA and other governments, started investing in Colossal because of our technologies, and once we started proof points, the last arguments that we have against some of those scientists are philosophical ones, right? They're like, it's not a mammoth.
Right.
It's not a direwolf. And it's like this concept of speciation is a human construct that we are trying to impose on nature that flows more like a river than a rock. And
So
there's
are they saying that it's not because it didn't come straight from nature? It's something that you've recreated by piecing this together with that. Like, what are the genes that you had to use to create a direwolf? We didn't totally explain this.
Yeah.
So you have CRISPR, you have these gene editing tools, you have a good sample of DNA. How do you turn that into a wolf?
So you map them next to it, and there was a study that came out about, and once again, this goes back to the status quo of scientists, of academic scientists. There was a paper that came out a few years ago because they didn't have much data. They said that direwolves weren't closer related to wolves. They were closely related to jackals. And that's because at the time, they only had 0.15% of the genome, right? They just didn't have all the data. That's not a negative. They just didn't have all the data. Now we know that they actually were closely related to wolves because we have more data. And
Which
we can fill
wolves?
Gray wolves, or the precursor to gray wolves, right? So they were closer to the wolf ancestry line in kind of the broader canid group and family group. And so what we found is, so once you do that, we start looking at all these genes and we start to understand what are the differences, and we start to see that in certain parts of the genome that are responsible for size, for muscle, for craniofacial, that there's differences, right? So we can start to map and say, okay, where are the differences between gray wolves and where are the differences between gray wolves and direwolves? And then with those, we have a lot of different tools that we can then go use to make those changes from the direwolves in a gray wolf cell line. And so, and then once you go through that process, we didn't talk about this earlier, you do the same process called somatic cell nuclear transfer, which is effectively cloning, where you take the nucleus of one cell, you put that into another egg cell, and then you take that embryo and you insert it into a surrogate.
And is this a 100% dire wolf, or is this a new thing?
So this goes into the philosophical thing.
Right.
So if you look at speciation, right, there's basically, the scientists don't agree on how you classify a species. So you've got certain people that'll say, well, if a species is dictated by something that can't breed, that's literally a definition. Like if this animal can't breed with this animal, then that's its own species. Then you have other people, you have the paleontologists, and some of them love us, like Kenneth Lacavara, who's arguably the number one paleontologist in the world that loves us. But then you have other paleontologists that just hate us. And they do it based solely on tooth morphology because they argue that's the only thing that is going to be persistent over time. And I asked a paleontologist recently that hates us. I said, if I made a mammoth with that was giant with pink curly fur and it had the right tooth morphology, you're saying that based on your scientific papers that you would say that's a mammoth. And she's like, yes, but that doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, and so but then
why does she hate you guys?
Because why does anyone, anytime you do anything in this world now that's moderately bold or polarizing, people give you pushback.
But this is heavily bold. I wouldn't say this is moderately bold. You made 3 fucking dire wolves. That's not moderately bold. It's really kind of one of the craziest things that a human being's ever done.
It's definitely in the realm.
This is right up there with inventing the internet.
Yeah. So when you see, and we have more stuff to come that I think will be equally interesting.
I feel like there's people out there. Did you worry that someone is going to get, because this falls into religious realms.
Well, there's philosophical and religious, and so back on speciation, polar bears and brown bears are 2 different species,
right?
But they mate and produce viable offspring all the time. And a bear expert will tell you that a polar bear is just a aquatic adapted, cold adapted bear. Right? And so I always ask people that
their offspring they can have children.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Yes. It's not like a donkey.
Yeah, exactly. So there's different ways to characterize it.
Making a mule.
Yeah, but there's different ways to say is something, right? And so we are not the same, right? If I don't know what percent, you probably from 23andMe or something have some percentage Neanderthal. You don't say that you're an admixture or a hybrid. You just say you're a human. You don't really.
Right, but that's a good point though, because Neanderthal, if you want to talk about a different species, just because they could breed with us, God, they're so different.
But that's it. But like I said, there's 6 different ways. There's actually a species definition that's based solely on geographics, and there's a funny paper out there around one species of toad that they built a road through, and the same toads live on 2 sides of the street, and they're different species. And they're the same fucking toad.
Just because there's a road.
Just because we as humans changed. It's called geographic isolation of speciation. So it's just crazy. And so the only arguments that we now have is, but is it a mammoth? And it's like, well, then don't call it a mammoth. I asked people, I was like, did you see Jurassic Park? And they're like, yeah. I was like, what was Jurassic Park? To your question, what do you think? What was Jurassic Park about to you? When
To me?
Yeah, if you're going to take your kids to see Jurassic Park, what is the movie about?
Dinosaurs.
Is it because they took ancient DNA and they mixed it with a bunch of other stuff? Are they dinosaurs, or are they genetically modified animals, GMOs, genetically modified organisms that have inserted genes from lots of different things? Or are they dinosaurs? If they serve the ecological function, this is what's called functional de-extinction. If they serve the ecological function and they have the lost biodiversity and phenotypes that made that animal unique, like the polar and a bear, they're just that animal. So this starts the whole religious and philosophical debates, where it's funny because the scientists who should not fall into these philosophical debates, when they don't like what you're doing, that's what they go to.
So what was the argument? How did they present it?
It's just like by their own definition, they're like, well, it doesn't have enough DNA. So I was like, but the second direwolf that we have, or the second genome that we have from the tooth has less of the same DNA than the skull. Does that mean that it wasn't a direwolf? And it just turns into you're missing the point conversation. I was like, I'm just asking questions.
I would like to know the point, though. What is her point?
Their point.
What is her overall argument?
The general point of the people is that they want to pick one speciation definition and adhere us to that. And if you do that, no animal, including our animals, will fall into one species, right? It's just people that are using the framework that they set that isn't consistent, kind of against based on the argument that they want to make.
Interesting. So species is just something.
It's a human construct. It's not,
and it's just a thing if it can breed with another thing.
Well, I mean that is one definition. There is another definition saying that it's only a species if it can't breed with another thing. Oh. So if I genetically modify them to make it where they can't breed with wolves, does that mean they're on species? Like it just gets into this dumb philosophical perspective because we made up this construct.
Right. But as a person who studies biology, which this person is, right, I could kind of understand her perspective where she's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? How is this group of people with a bunch of money and a bunch of eggheads, how are these geniuses allowed to get together, splice some genes up, and serve up a direwolf? I could see it from her perspective.
Yeah, 100%, right? But I think that if we don't do big, bold things, it's important. One of the things we should definitely show is
this is just like the guy in Jurassic Park.
But we should.
This is basically the same conversation.
But John Hammond.
Worry.
But John Hammond, I don't think that they were really focused on conservation unless there was a subplot that didn't make it the final cut.
No,
we
they
actually
just want
are
to make an attraction.
Yeah, so if we could show the red wolf, I think that'd be amazing because all the technologies that we made on the path to bring back the direwolf, we make available to conservation.
Well, let's explain the red wolf to people because you were saying before I didn't even know how few of them there are.
Yeah, so if you go to the one more, so this is a red wolf. That's Hope. That's the world's first cloned red wolf. So I've actually made more red wolves than I've made direwolves. So I've made 4 red wolves, 1 female.
Are you just releasing these fuckers?
No, they're in an ecological preserve as well. And so, but you're gonna die when you hear what I went through on this. So I found out that we try to pair every de-extinction project with a species preservation project. Outside of making all of our technology for free, right? Everything that we make that has an application to conservation, anyone in the world can use to help save animals. They don't pay us a dime. It's all open source. It's all free. We have 48 conservation partners. The team that's running the Northern White Rhino Project, we're their exclusive genetic rescue partner. We're working with elephants in Botswana. We're working with elephants in Kenya. So anybody can use our technologies for free, right? We're working on chytrid, a terrible fungus in Australia. And so if that's not enough, I found out that that there's only 15 of those of red wolves back in the wild in North Carolina. So I met with the upcoming governor.
Are they in other states as well, or is
no?
it just...
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So they're only recognized by U.S. Fish and Wildlife there. But this incredible woman from Princeton, top of her field, she's one of the top wolf geneticists in the world, Bridget Von Holt, identified a population of wolves in Louisiana that have red wolf-like characteristics. So she started darting them, taking samples, and what she found is they actually have more quote-unquote red wolf in them than the red wolves that are being identified in North Carolina.
And is it part of the problem they're inbreeding with coyotes?
Yeah, but they've all been, like these guys, like the ones in North Carolina have all inbred with coyotes. All the red wolves have some coyote in them because
they look like coyotes.
Well, because the ones in North Carolina even look more like coyotes.
Really?
And because the reality is every single species is what's called an admixture. Everything is inbreeding with everything on some level, right? And so everything in life is an admixture. It goes back to the Neanderthal.
So this binary idea that we have is silly.
It's a human caused construct, right? And it's insane. So I went to some folks from the last administration, right? And I took some data with me, and I said, hey, we really want to help this Red Wolf program. We don't need any money. We open source all of our technologies, and we've used a technology that's non-invasive for cloning, where we actually take a vial of blood, we isolate what's called endothelial progenitor cells, basically the inner lining of your blood vessel, right? Because there's no nucleus in blood cells. So we catch those, and when we catch those, we then isolate them, we grow them, and we clone from them, right? Which is amazing because if you think about typical cloning from an animal welfare perspective, a lot of times you have to anesthetize the animal, you have to take ear punches, skin biopsies. It's actually pretty invasive, terrible process to do cloning. We can simply do it. Every single zoo takes blood from their animals to check certain levels and whatnot. We give blood all the time. And so it's a very non-invasive, it's about as non-invasive as you can get, right? And so we found a way, which we're open sourcing on Tuesday, is open sourcing this model of how you go clone from blood, which is a game changer for biobanking because now you don't have to go hurt an animal, take pieces of the animal, anesthetize the animal. We can just take bloods and put them in freezers and be able to bring them back or clone them if there's a lack of genetic diversity using this thing. So I went out to Washington with my team. I showed them Hope as a baby and little videos of, and you may have videos of Hope, Jamie. I don't know if it's in the folder. I showed them videos of Hope, and I said, hey, there's only a handful of, we made these 4 wolves from 3 different genetic lines. We made these we've made these from 3 different genetic lines, right? So there's actually more genetic diversity in these wolves than what's alive in the population. And we said we'd like for you to help protect the work that's being done in Louisiana. And then how many wolves would you like us to make using that population as well as frozen samples that are dead? And we'll just give them to you. There's no cost. Here was the feedback. We need to spend 5 to 6 years on an internal study and spend $22 million to see if it's possible to clone wolves. And I was blown away. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't very clear. This is a cloned wolf. Like here, you can fly with me to the preserve. You have to sign an NDA, but you fly with me to the preserve. And they're like, we need to spend 5 to 6 years and $20+ million to go understand this. To understand this. I was like, we'll give you all of the technology, and if you tell me you want 100 wolves, I'll just make you 100 wolves, and we'll even engineer in more genetic diversity for you. And the response was, we'll get back to you. We tried to have 3 other meetings, no showed and canceled every time when we flew there. I just got back from a meeting with the Department of Interior, which Fish and Wildlife rolls up to, and they're very, very focused on innovation, not regulation, which has been pretty amazing.
That's great.
And immediately they said, we celebrate, and Doug Burgum, the Secretary of Interior there, who we met with, said, we celebrate. He's a huge conservationist, huge Teddy Roosevelt guy, member of the Explorers Club. And he's like, that we do not have a celebration when animals come off the endangered species list. Only about 3% ever come off, and we're really good at putting them on, and we celebrate putting them on. So we have to do something about this. And if you're saying that we could productionize species, and as long as we have the right support to rewild them, people can use your technologies for free to make more of these different species that are critically endangered while also biobanking the samples along the way. He's like, why wouldn't we do this? And I was like, well, I met with the previous folks, and they said that we need 5 years and $20 million. That they were going to spend it internally. They weren't going to use us to do the feasibility. So they were going to spend it internally on this. And we're like, we'll just do it for free. And he's like, we will completely support the initiative, and we're going to help get you plugged in so you can help biobank our species and also help us support red wolf conservation.
So when will you start reintroducing these?
So we just had that meeting last week.
Soulless red wolves from hell. You've created a lab. They're gonna start eating people.
And so we're gonna. We just met with them last week. So
they're beautiful. God, they're so beautiful.
Well, it's just like why we shouldn't be afraid of innovation, right?
No, but the real question is, where do you stop?
Yeah.
Because 90% of all animals that have ever existed, all species are extinct.
Yeah.
Like, are we gonna?
I think you focus on the species that are critically endangered and are keystone species, meaning the environment needs them.
Right, but
the ones that we drove
back.
But the ones that we drove to extinction. right?
Okay.
So that's where I think you
it's
start.
debatable whether or not we drove direwolves to extinction. We don't really know what happened 10,000 years ago. I'm inclined to think that when you see the death of 65% of North American megafauna
Yeah.
that happened really quickly.
Really quickly.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that these scientists that believe it was an asteroid or a comet impact are correct.
I think it's most likely it's a combination. We do know that when early that anthropologic effects from humans, that when early man went onto a landmass at scale, that we start to see that. We see that in Australia and other places.
Sure.
But to your point, it's much slower. It's much slower.
This is a different thing.
Yeah.
Are you going to bring back saber-toothed tigers?
Everyone seems to have their favorite animal for us to save, right? Like the
Direwolves
vaquita.
would be my favorite.
Yeah,
That would be my favorite.
Yeah, direwolves. You got to come. Maybe at some point you see them, but
I want to.
They're amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just beautiful animals.
Yeah.
So saber-tooth tiger is a class. So we put that as a class. Most commonly, people think of the Smilodon as the saber-tooth tiger. There's not to date been really great Smilodon DNA. There is great Homotherium DNA, which is another type of saber-tooth cat.
Oh, I didn't know there was more than one type of saber-tooth. How many are there?
They classify them differently, based on it. But
Obviously, you've been studying this, so you're thinking about doing it.
I'm not. I mean, we like to study ancient DNA, right? Like one of the things where I think that John Reeves is 100% right is people say there were no saber-tooth tigers in Alaska. That's just an incorrect statement. There were probably no Smilodons there, but there are Homotheriums, which are a saber-tooth cat.
Yeah, he's found things that were not supposed to be there.
I've held things in his. I've held a direwolf skull in his. I hope he's fine with me saying that, in his facility.
Yeah, I think he's talked about that.
Yeah.
But they found cave bears, short-faced bears. Wow,
Yeah, so
look at that.
Homotherium is still a saber-toothed cat, but what happens is this goes back to that philosophical perspective. They think that so if you look up Smilodon in comparison.
So this has shorter saber teeth, but still.
But
Can you give me that CGI image of it again, Jamie, on the left? That's so fucking cool.
Yeah, and I don't think there's.
I don't think you should bring something like that back, but if you do, I'm going to visit it. I mean, I want to see that thing take down a bite. Look at his paws, man.
There was wait till you see the direwolf paws.
Bro, but that would be so crazy.
So
Now,
if you show
now
a
all of a sudden, I
Smilodon-
want you to do it.
Now
Give me another large picture of it, Jamie. There's some other pictures of those. So Smilodon's the one that has the largest teeth?
It has the largest known teeth, but when people think of saber-tooth tiger, this is what, or saber-tooth cat.
That's a crazy.
This is what they think of.
Those are crazy. I wonder
Yeah.
why nature wanted you to have that.
I mean, probably having to pierce things like mammoth hides and others that are quite thick.
It has to be, right? Something where there's a genetic
and
advantage.
their jaw hinges.
Look at that one on the right,
Incredible.
lower right, Jamie. Below that to the right.
There.
Yeah, right there. Click on that. Look at that, man.
Yeah. And I
CGI
love,
is so
I
incredible.
love because we don't. What's amazing? We don't have the DNA from it, so we have no idea what the color pattern is.
Right.
Which you can see here, right? It's like it's got a short tail, it's got a long tail, it's got a leopard, it's got
tigers.
stripes, right?
Right. We don't even know if they had long tail.
We don't
or
even know
short
if
tail.
they could have been white.
Wow, that would be wild.
So we do have there have been some really well preserved pups and others in the permafrost of Homotherium.
Whoa.
Have you ever
and
seen, have you seen
Homotherium we know has that kind of coloration to it?
We don't. I don't want to say we do or don't. We have not done the analysis on that on the Homotherium yet.
Look at that little guy.
We do have the genome of it though.
Wow.
Not that we're going to work on
Okay, so
it.
that has brown hair.
Have you seen the American short-faced bear?
Yes.
Yeah. That's the thing I'm
Many
probably the
times.
most scared of.
Yeah, you can't bring that back.
17 or 18-foot giant
You
bear.
can't bring that back.
We're not working on it. I'm just saying.
But somebody might. That's the problem. There might be some fucking crackhead out there that's got $40 billion that's out of his mind.
Well, I also
You know?
think that
Like some crazy dude who's just got the resources.
that's insane.
Look at that.
That's
you know?
that to me is megalodon scary. That's
Made a lot of money,
That's a
so-
man.
Yeah.
That's a land megalodon.
Well, that is an enormous animal, and they think that's one of the animals that probably prevented people from crossing the Bering Strait. More,
I read that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a theory, but it's a pretty good one.
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
you knew that, if you knew there
that's
was a
out there.
lineage of like super, polar bears were out there, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go near it.
And it is essentially a super polar bear,
Yeah.
which is really scary because polar bears
Are terrifying.
and completely carnivorous.
And they don't care. They'll just walk right up to you and kill you.
Oh yeah, there's a great video of these guys that are behind a fence.
Yeah.
That was somebody sent it to me yesterday. Oh fuck, I'll find it. I know where it is. Someone sent it to me yesterday of these guys that are right behind a fence while this polar bear is trying to get through the fence. There's
Right.
3 of them, and they're talking to him like, "Hey, big guy, you can't come in here. Hey, fella."
And it's just calmly walking towards like, I'm going to get in there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, polar bears scare me.
very spooky. Well,
Yeah.
they're spooky because they don't eat anything but meat. So we're on the menu.
Yeah.
All humans are on the menu. Anything that walks and breathes is on the menu. I got it here. Where is it? Shit. It'll take me a few minutes. Sorry. Jamie, pause for a second. Let me find this because it's good. Okay. I just sent it to you. So it looks like they're in, I don't know where they are. I think it'll say on the video. So these guys, here, give me some volume. Polar bears, that's an oil rig. So it's probably Canada. Look at these guys. That sound.
Yeah.
They're just trying to eat you. Look at
I
this.
have 2 more behind it.
Yep.
Hey, go on.
Go on.
Go on.
Probably not going to work.
They're just trying to figure out how to get in to eat you.
Hey, sweetheart. Hey,
Sweetheart. Sweetheart wants to rip your liver out.
hey, go on.
I
They're
bet
so
sweetheart.
beautiful.
They are beautiful.
It's interesting that they're the most dangerous ones because they're the ones we use for Coca-Cola and Klondike bars.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild, though?
You have them just like playing around in the snow, but they're actually terrifying.
Yeah, you were saying about the Younger Dryas is really interesting. It's very, very interesting because it's a fairly new theory and explains a lot, and especially when you look at the mass extinction that did take place during that time. I would love to have seen what it looked like when all those animals were around. Like what was we kind of have a sense of what, because of safaris and videos, we know what it looks like when lions are interacting
Right.
with wildebeest in Africa. Like, what did it look like in Kansas?
Like a
15,000 years
Pleistocene.
ago. Yeah, like what was it like?
You know, there's a extinct bison species that
Yeah.
is the bison latifrons. Have you seen those guys?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're like they have
yeah.
like 8-foot long Texas Longhorns
Crazy.
on like super HGH like bison. It's
Yeah, our
amazing.
bison are small compared to the extinct bisons,
Yeah.
right? Were they the largest of the North American bisons?
Yeah, the bison latifrons was.
See if we can get a photo of that. Yeah.
They were
I didn't know about
they're
them
amazing.
until a few years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing. It's, I mean, there were so many different things. Giant sloths. There's the saber-toothed tiger, the American lion, which is
There's
bigger
an
than the
American
African
cheetah.
lion. Yes.
The American cheetah is, we actually have a full genome of it. And then there was also one of my favorite animals, which is kind of a weird one, probably on the list since we're talking about direwolves and saber-toothed tigers. Have you seen the Stellar sea cow?
No. What is that?
Think of like a manatee or dugong, right? That's the size of like a large whale.
What?
Yeah. But the sad thing is it died. It actually died off before. It died off and yeah.
Whoa.
It died off though within 100 years of its discovery.
When was that? We killed them all, huh?
Yeah, we
They
totally
probably
killed them.
turned them into candles or something.
Yeah. Or
Lipstick.
burn their fat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was actually really
Largest
important. The
Saurinian
Yeah.
to ever exist. It was hunted to extinction only 30 years after being
30 years, yeah.
described in the 18th century. Wow.
Yeah, and it was, and we
What
actually
a bunch
have
of fuckheads.
we have a
people
full
are.
genome of this too, which is pretty cool.
You gonna bring it back?
We can't I would bring this back in a heartbeat. It was hugely important to the kelp forests of the Pacific Northwest. It was great. It's not scary. It's huge. It's like
Right,
it's-
but then
another marine
if you bring
animal.
that back, why wouldn't you bring back a megalodon?
There is no megalodon DNA.
There's none?
No. I will say that the CEO of the largest, the president and CEO of the largest free museum in America, really wants me to do megalodon, but he's like, I can never say that publicly. Because
I think you just outed him.
Yeah, but there's a lot of museums. I could be wrong on the size. Yeah, whatever. He's great though. But there is no DNA.
He would have to eat a lot, and
but
we've
on-
already
on-
killed everything in the ocean.
So one of the
unfortunately.
things that's weird and interesting that we're also working on is artificial wombs at Colossal. Because if you want to get to this world where you could productionize endangered species like northern white rhinos instead of having to use surrogates for an animal welfare perspective. If you can get to the point that you can engineer genetic diversity into 200 northern white rhinos, grow them in labs and bags, and then and then you can control that population very, very well. You could then reintroduce them, with folks in the field that are the rewilding experts, right? And so we were really not focusing on we kind of rely on third parties on the rewilding modeling, and all of our, our 48 conservation partners. We are really just kind of focused on the core science that supports their initiatives. But if we are successful with our artificial wombs, and we are quite far on that project, that I would not be surprised if eventually you see we have to get a mouse first, but if a mouse
Have you
works.
guys had these conversations where you sit down, you go, how does this scale outward? What does this look like, this technology in 100
Yeah.
years? Did we just fuck up?
No, I think that if you look at the birthing crisis that we're in and kind of population decline crisis, I think that you look at global, people having women having kids later, IVF clinics, people freezing their embryos. All of that's massively on the increase. It's all going up and to the right? And we also know that globally, sperm and fertility and others is going down and to the right? So it's not a good look for the future of humanity in general. And so I think, though, especially, and then we also have philosophical and you have religious, you have philosophical, and then you have socio issues, right? That people have different perspectives on, having kids, same-sex couples, all these things. So we at Colossal have kind of made this mandate that we're not going to work on humans, right? Because it gets too weird. We get asked the Neanderthal and the dinosaur question every fucking day. So we're just not going to bridge that gap. What we'll do is spin out those technologies. But I do think it is harder to grow a rhino in a artificial womb or exogenous development system than it is a human. Not ethically or through an FDA process, but it is scientifically harder to gestate some of the animals we're trying to gestate ex utero. So I do think that some of those technologies could make it eventually into the human population.
But that's where it gets really weird, right? You could create a child with no mother or father.
I do think that I think it's about optionality, right? I think that there are certain situations where that would be a blessing. I just had my first kid, so we did not grow up in an artificial womb.
Yeah, but I mean, the people that are skeptical about this stuff, this is what they point to. It's like what is involved in the creation of life? Well, it's been people having sex, and then a sperm fertilizes the egg. A child is born. They raise the child. It gets some of their behavior characteristics. It gets the genetics, and then we integrate it into a community. And there's life. But if you could just make life without any of that, what is that? Where is that? You know what I'm saying?
No, it's a great philosophy.
How much of the child's development is taking place while it's in the mother
and getting
sharing
that shared
Yes.
experience, the
Yeah.
hormonal cues and whatnot.
Yes.
I wouldn't have a child that way.
Right. What if you're making a sociopath? What if you're making a completely
Because there's no
empathy.
there's no connection.
No connection
Yeah.
to people. They come out of the gate, Ted Kaczynski, all fucked up. Really, that's
No, it's a fair point.
we don't know what the
Yeah.
process is while a
Well, and
baby is inside of a woman's body.
And there's people that are working on this technology specifically for humans. Right now, we're focusing on it for extinct species and endangered
Right.
animals.
But the question was, when this scales out,
Yeah.
when you scale out 100 years from now, what did you just do?
Well, my biggest thing that I think would be helpful is if we had a world where we if Colossal gets ultimate success, I'd say that we've successfully rewilded animals back into their natural habitat. We've revitalized these mosaic ecosystems that, including your picture of what did the Arctic look like
Right.
back in the day. How do we have that? Because that was actually a crazy. If you look at the work that's been done in Pleistocene Park by Sergei and Nikita Zimov, they've actually shown that rewilding northern Siberia with cold-tolerant megafauna actually can revitalize the ecosystem. It can add more biodiversity. It can actually keep the ground temperatures colder in the winter, so it sequesters more carbon. So I think this idea of nature-based and living with nature in a in an ecological model is something that, I hope that we are successful at. And I hope that, Colossal is also successful at, removing animals from the endangered species list.
So what you were talking about mammoths specifically, the study that showed that it would help.
But they've already done it with like muskox, horses, and a few other species up there. So they're doing it. They're doing it right now. They've been doing it for over 20 years.
And there was some talk about eventually doing this with mammoths and then releasing those mammoths into Siberia.
Yeah, that was something that Larry or that Sergei Nikita Zimov wanted to do.
How long before some Russian oligarch hunts a mammoth?
Yeah, I mean, look, given the geopolitical, we see, going back to your wolf example, we see boundaries and geopolitical lines, right? The animals don't, right? And so we will probably not rewild our first mammoths in Siberia for many reasons.
But you think you will rewild a mammoth?
Yeah, I think, our goal, if you look at colossal.com/Tasmania, for example, we actually build working groups with folks around everyone from academia to private landowners to indigenous people groups, governments, to understand we don't have a thylacine. I think we'll have a thylacine in the next 8 years. I really do. I think based on where we are, our current course and speed, there's 70 million years of genetic divergence between a fat-tailed dunart, which is like a mouse-sized marsupial, and a wolf and this, right? But we actually, and if you just kind of scroll through into the people.
So it's a wolf-like marsupial.
Yeah.
Does it actually have a pouch that
it does. It actually also has a backward pouch. So most pouches, other than the wombat, are forward-facing. Mm-hmm. It has a backwards pouch because they think because it was a burrowing animal. So that way you weren't
protect
just
the babies.
Yeah, absolutely suffocate them.
God, nature's fascinating.
But if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see, and just if you just do a quick scroll, you'll see that we actually have gone out and partnered with all these different groups, even though we don't have thylacines. We have quarterly meetings in Tasmania around rewilding the thylacine in one of the groups that we have involved in it is the Logging Commission. Going back to your, how do we live with nature, kind of like with your example with the cattlemen and the ranchers. Well, the biggest economic driver right now in Tasmania is actually the Logging Commission. So if you think that you're going to reintroduce an animal back without them or their lobbyists having into the forest, without them having a perspective, then I think that's just a naive way to look at the world. And so going back, the thylacine and mammoths and others, we try to build these working groups ahead of time so that people can get excited about, what are the challenges? What are the unintended consequences? And that's not our job to persuade them. It's just our job to kind of listen to them and then figure it out. And, that approach of listening to our critics and listening and being inclusive in these communities has helped us, I think, dramatically think through what our rewilding strategies are.
So when you have a rewilding strategy, what experts do you bring in to have this discussion of what kind of an impact this could? I mean, you haven't done any rewilding. Let's be clear to everybody.
Yes.
They're not releasing direwolves.
And the woolly mice are not getting released.
Right.
Yes.
So this is all theoretically.
Yes.
But if you do have one, what would be what would you look at specifically? How do you take into account all the different species? Do you take into account, like with the thylacine, particularly because it's a large predator, the amount of animals it's going to eat?
Right.
These animals are not conditioned. They haven't evolved to be around this thing. It's been almost 100 years since the last one was there.
So on the evolve part, this is actually kind of weird. So you do ecological field studies. So you work with ecologists, conservationists, predator experts, like people that understand predation, people that understand the land. So you have to work with these kind of big working groups. We have a project going on right now in central Tasmania, which is amazing. And this, the old school Looney Tunes, like Wile E. Coyote, where he's and he goes through a wall and there's a hole, or the Kool-Aid Man, right? If you had that cutout, we made cutouts and painted them of thylacines, but also of cats and dogs and other things, and wolves and other things, and we put them out near camera traps in central Tasmania. And when we've reviewed the data, you'll have a quoll or a wombat or one of these animals kind of walking through, or even a wallaby kind of walking through, and they'll see a cat, and they'll kind of look at it. When they see, and remember, to your point, this is for them is multiple generations, right? Because these animals don't live hundreds of years. And so when they see the cutout and shape and the coloration and size of a thylacine, they freeze and they absolutely freak out.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been collecting this data for 18 months, and we're publishing a paper on it.
That is so cool.
There's like generational trauma that is baked in to their DNA to avoid a thylacine.
What's the only way they survive? I mean, without a language to pass down information, what you know, it makes you wonder, like, how much of that is in us? Like, when people have ophidiophobia, you know, or arachnophobia, fear of snakes and spiders, like, what is that from? Like, because it's crippling. I've seen people that have crippling fear of spiders, where it doesn't even make any sense. Well, somebody got almost killed by a spider, and that's inside of them.
Right.
You know, those genes passed on. And you see a spider, they freak out, man. When I was doing Fear Factor, if we found out that someone had a fear of spiders or a fear of snakes, guess what?
That was on the show.
That's on the show.
Yeah, that's like me in Heights. It's like every episode you had back in the day of Heights.
That's because you're smart.
Yeah, it's like fucking terrifying. I'm like,
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in a fucking hotel and I'm on like the 50th floor, I'm like, why?
Why? Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, so I don't have like road noise. I'm like, this is gonna be really hard to get out of here.
It's so sketchy.
Yeah.
It's so scary. It's just like the building moves a little bit when it's windy.
Yeah.
Fuck all this.
I saw my toilet water shaking the other day.
Fuck that.
No. Here?
Yeah, Jamie
lives up high.
he lives way up high. Jamie sends me pictures from his house. I freak out. Like, no.
No, I can't.
No.
I'm not,
I wouldn't. I like to be on the ground. I like to be on the ground.
Well, I hate flying too, which sucks because I fly.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I fly all the time.
I'm just counting on these fucking screws and bolts and shit.
Yeah. Because like the worst is like when you're sitting there, and there's now been like these renders of planes that have like glass or plexiglass. I'm like, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I get mad if I get on a plane and the people don't shut the window side. I was like, I don't need. I'm in the bowl. I'm in the tube.
Yeah,
it's lit on fire. I just want to go. Yeah, I get.
Just
because if you
me.
think about the point where you're sitting in a chair and then you look down and you have a floor, you're like, that's not. There's not that much. There's like 10,000 feet, you know, 3,000 feet below me.
When you see something like the one that happened in Canada where the plane flipped upside down too, you just like that. You can't get that one out of your head.
A Delta Airlines flight.
Yeah.
It wasn't like
whoopsies.
Crazy airline that you've never heard of.
It was a person who was not that good at flying and kind of recent.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
Yeah.
Hire someone better.
Yeah.
This
and
is crazy.
I go to DC a decent amount. And so like the whole DC thing like absolutely freaked me out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes I stay at some of those hotels that are right on the river and you see the choppers fly. You see the choppers fly. The choppers fly.
That's the DC one.
But look how much the water's shaking at this pool.
Oh, yeah. Did you see the one in Thailand?
This is where it was.
Oh, did you see the water that's flying off the roofs
in
Thailand?
in the
flying off the roofs where you see like from the ground, it looks like it's raining. It's crazy.
Anyway,
yeah. Whoa. That would be the last day I would spend in that fucking room.
Yeah, you're out.
Like that's it.
It's like if
done. Bye.
If I saw a ghost, I'm like, all right, I'm moving.
Yeah. Bye. Maybe the ghost is cool. I'm not totally scared of ghosts because I don't think ghosts have ever killed anybody. You know, I'm scared of thylacines.
I'm not scared of thylacines.
I'm not.
They start off the size of a grain of rice.
I'm not.
You gotta be really nice to them.
So does everything.
It's kind of like AI. You gotta be really nice to it.
Yes. I
saw a great gift. I saw this great image on X the other day that is like, it's got all the robots lining up to kill humans, and it's like, no, not this one. It said thank you in its request.
Oh boy.
So I was like, I'm gonna be very nice on all of my requests on Grok.
Well, I have a weird situation going on at my house because I have chickens, but I eat chicken. And I don't eat the chickens that I have. I eat their eggs.
Yeah.
But they're cute. I'm like, hey, girls, what's up, ladies?
Yeah.
Like, I have no desire to harm them. I try to protect them. If I'm driving on the driveway and one of them is in the middle of the driveway, I have to be very slow and let her cross. But I eat chicken.
Did you see that study that came out a couple weeks ago that having 2 eggs, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but you have 2 eggs, if you have at least 2 eggs a week, that it lowers the probability of Alzheimer's by like 47%.
Yeah. It turns out Alzheimer's is connected to a lot of stuff that's in
around
our
inflammation.
Diet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
They're saying that Gary said it was, I think it was Gary that was telling me that he thought it was like, it's now becoming a more popular belief that it's diabetes type 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that, which is really weird to think of it that way. But it's just so much. I mean, obviously you know this now because you're on a health path.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel much better.
I feel incredible. I mean, I did.
Isn't it nuts how many people are just running around out there feeling like shit?
Well, I was. I mean, part of the reason I started Colossal, I mean, I told you the story about how I got with George, but before that, I I built a handful of different technology companies. My last company was a satellite software and defense company, and was building it, running it. And this was in late 2019, early 2020. I had to be in Tokyo and I had to be in Shanghai. So I came back. I went to CES, the big consumer electronics show in Vegas. Saw everyone in the world, right, that's there, because it's stupid big. A week and a half later, I'm in NASA Marshall with the director there, because we were doing some work for NASA at the time at my last company. And I was with one of my number two at the company, this guy named Greg, who's our chief strategy officer. He was coughing, he wasn't feeling well. We both were kind of feeling like shit. I was like, oh, we've been on the road a lot, we've been drinking. We came back on a Friday. On Friday night, we were going back on Slack around talking about aliens and shit. And then the next day, I got a call from his wife that he had a sudden cardiac event.
Oh, Jesus.
And so that for me was a big wake-up call, because I got really sick during COVID. Like, I was on that early strain of COVID. And there's definitely multiple strains. I don't care what anyone tells you. There's definitely multiple things that came out of the thing. And so I got super, super sick. And, I now rarely drink. I rarely have caffeine. I've kind of tried to cut out stuff. I exercise regularly. And looking at all these things that people think are weird or that used to be weird or alternative, like, a dry sauna, a cold plunge, red light. I do that every day now.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome, man. You're lifting weights too?
Yeah, lifting weights on a regiment, everything.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So important, and I tell people it's not even a vanity thing. Don't do it because you want big muscles. Preserve your tissue.
Yeah.
Preserve your bone mass.
Well, I don't want to be I now have a 9-month-old son, right? And he wants to hang out, and he's going to get bigger. And if I can't pick him up, that's a sad day, And I've kind of gotten this mindset of I see people that are older that are in wheelchairs or can't walk. It's like, it's kind of a blessing to walk.
It is.
So why would I squander that blessing? Yeah. Why would I not lean into it and make sure that when I'm 90, I can walk?
Yeah, it's a blessing to be healthy. It's a blessing. I mean, it's just we're so concerned about our day-to-day existence that we lose track of this big picture.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to do something that if it wasn't possible, you would wish it was possible, and that is get healthier. Like, if it wasn't possible, if we just existed in a state, and whatever that state was, there's no medicine that could fix it, there's no exercise that could fix it, diet doesn't change it, this is just who you are as a being, and it goes away. But that's not even remotely true. It's actually the opposite. There's friends that I have that are my age, and they look like they're my dad.
Yeah.
And that's because they've been drinking and smoking and sleeping late and fucking off their whole life and no exercise at all, and your body deteriorates.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm on the journey. I'm not at the end, right? It is a constant journey.
I'm on the journey. We're all on the journey. There's no
since
end.
I started working with Gary, I did. Have you seen this function test? Have you done the function test?
What is the function test?
It's like function health. It's just a suit. It's just all. If you go to your doctor, I do quarterly blood work, but then I also do this the function test, which is just a massively all-encompassing blood. It's like 2 tests twice a year, and so I do that test, and after working with Gary for a while, now my biological age, or my actual age is 43. My biological age is 35.
That's amazing.
But it's just been working for a year with Gary, taking the right supplements, getting the right routine, giving myself nutrients. I buy, and you can actually taste a difference, right? Like, if you go to a store and get a steak or chicken, you even if it's free range and all that shit, it tastes great. It tastes better than something that you buy just that's terrible at a store. But when you order from some of these true Amish places and places that have actually grown the food completely natural, that doesn't have just a fake pre-purchased certified organic, you can taste the difference in the nutrient density. It's insane. And
have you had
only
a lot of wild game?
Yeah, so that's what I order now. So I order a bunch. So I do elk steaks. I do a lot of steaks from this farm that Gary recommended to me. It's just great.
Is it bison? Do they have bison?
They do have
as well?
bison too. I have bison too. Yeah, it's Parker
Bison's
Pastures. They're just
fantastic.
when I have a steak from these guys, it's been you can taste it. And I've had my brother-in-law and my father-in-law had friends. I was like, no, we're gonna try these steaks out of the freezer. And I was like, we're not just gonna buy something.
Well, it looks different.
It looks different. Yeah, it looks different. The coloration.
You get a pink steak from the grocery store, which is fine. You cook it, it tastes great. But if you get a grass-fed, grass-finished steak,
grass-finished, 100%.
A lot of ranches out here, Texas is a great place, and there's a lot of ranches out here that use regenerative agriculture, and they sell the animals that they kill, and it's like a dark red meat.
Yeah, it looks completely different, but
Yeah,
the
it tastes
taste
different.
You want to eat more of it. Like I feel full, but I want to finish it, and I also feel like I'm like, my body likes this because it's getting shit that it hasn't been getting.
You feel better when you eat it. Like you literally feel energized.
Yeah.
You know, I've given people elk before, and one of the things they say is like, "Dude, I have so much energy." I'm like, "Yeah,
yes,
welcome to my world."
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It is so great. But that was in the early days of Colossal. That was one of the things that we got asked by like heads of state, like not by like, you know, just random people. Random people on the internet too. Mostly like some people at large at different locations. They're like, "Can we eat them? Can we eat a mammoth? What's it taste like?" That was like that question came up faster than we thought.
Jesus
and this was in the
Christ.
I know that was in the
People are
first.
so weird.
They just don't.
Imagine wanting to eat something that's been extinct for 10,000 years. You just bring it back.
And that's what-
not even yet.
Yeah, and that was the first question.
Can I eat this?
Yeah.
I want woolly mammoth steak, my friend.
It was also domestic. The question happened domestically.
Oh, domestic.
Yeah, like
Really?
people
Fucking
in very big
psychos.
states. Yeah, I know.
They have too much money.
Yeah.
Fucking psychos.
Yeah, it's been
Go buy a car, you retards.
It's been
Stop
very
wanting to eat a
interesting.
mammoth. That's so crazy.
We get we get so many weird questions.
Well-
We get the dinosaur question. Probably the number one question we get is the dinosaur
Do
question.
you think if Jurassic Park, if Spielberg did it today, they'd have feathers?
We know that some dinosaurs had feathers. We know some had hair, like kind of precursor to feathers, and we know some that were just scaly. We have preserves of them. We can see in the fossil record whether they had it, right?
Have you seen the one that's in the Montana University? There's a university in Bozeman that has a museum. Isn't the university? It might just be a museum.
Yeah.
But when I was visiting there a few years back, they have a raptor, and one side of the raptor is feathered, and the other side is like Jurassic Park, like scaly. And you know, you look at it, you go, "Oh." It's just like, oh, it's a bird.
Yeah.
Like now it makes sense. Like it makes more sense with its little stupid arms. Like it makes more sense that it's a bird.
Have you seen the Watson?
No.
Can we pull up a Watson? So this is a bird that lives today in the Amazon, and it is
Watson.
It's called or Hoatzin. I think it's called. I don't know how you spell it, but it's like HOATZEN or something like that. We can find it. Yeah. Apparently, it also smells terrible. But if you type in it's the Hoatzin, and then if you click in and find a baby picture, it's got these little creepy hands. It looks like kind of like a bird like dinosaur. We did the genome on this for fun. So you can see it. It's like it climbs. So before it ever climbs, it actually climbs up everything.
Well, when you look at an eagle's talon, you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell is that?
And then it evolves. Like if you the first kind of like quote unquote dinosaur bird out there, it actually it crawls. It crawls like it doesn't fly. You know, most birds just sit there with their little like wing nubs and just don't do anything. These guys actually climb.
What about terror birds?
Oh yeah, those are scary.
That's a crazy animal. Like what the hell was that thing?
Yeah.
And that was, what was that? How many years ago did those things go extinct? It was
Oh, those
more
are
than
millions.
Millions, right?
Yeah. So the oldest DNA that we have is about 1.5 million years old.
That's it?
Yeah.
So dinosaurs are out of the picture.
So you can. A guy you should talk to about not that, but that's interesting is Kenneth Lacavara. He discovered the 4 largest dinosaurs of all time, including Dreadnoughtus, which is just it's the craziest thing ever. And going back Dreadnoughtus, and going back to the issues that
What is Dreadnoughtus?
Dreadnoughtus is amazing. So I don't know if it looks like that.
What?
Yeah,
Imagine
go to
it did.
Yeah, go to
You're-
that.
What cool colors.
It was.
So it's a plant eater.
Yeah, it's a plant eater.
It's the
that's
size of a fucking-
seven fruit. But
It's
going
almost
back,
as big as a
no, but
737.
going back
That's so
to this,
crazy.
Going back to this crazy notion of museums, he found it in Argentina, and he's amazing. Kenneth Lacavara, he's amazing. He found it in Argentina, discovered the species, named the species, and he brought it. He brought it to New Jersey to do all the modeling and all that. The government changed, and they yanked it back. You know the old school, like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark? That's where it is. It's basically in a warehouse. So it's on display for people in a museum. It's literally, this goes back to some of these governments and these museums. It's literally like it's in a bunch of crates in Western Argentina.
Really?
Yeah. and it's like the coolest thing ever. This is So that's Lacavara's lab, and so but it's truly amazing.
So with these, like that's one of the things about dinosaurs in museums, right? Like a lot of them, they've created artificial bones to fill in the blanks.
Fill in a lot of the blanks. Sometimes they'll get like a jawbone, and they're like, and here's the reconstruction.
Right. It's weird because you go to see it and you think you're going to see a dinosaur bone.
When it's only a percentage complete.
Yeah. And sometimes they're real clever and sometimes they're not. Like sometimes it'll be different colors for the real bone versus, and you're like, how much of this do you have?
And they're like 4%.
Yeah. How did you guess what it looked like? Like, and a lot of the images of the soft tissue overlay, like when they take the bones and then they create an animal out of it. Like, have you ever seen what rabbits look like if you take away their?
Yeah, they did this with like whales and stuff, and they look absolutely. Yeah. If you look at that, they look like the scariest things ever. And then you put a whale on there, and you're like, oh, that's not the worst thing.
Yeah, for whales, you see them and you look at them, you're like, oh, they're sweet.
Yeah,
just chilling in the water. But if you see them with the teeth and everything, and just the skeleton,
it looks like an alien monster.
Yeah, like an alien monster. Yeah. So I wonder what we were looking at.
There was a one species that we don't have DNA for that would be amazing to bring back because the ecological benefit is there was a giant beaver.
Yeah,
a giant beaver sounds amazing and stupid.
When did that thing die off?
I don't know. It'd probably have to be. It would probably be in the late Pleistocene.
One of the things that I learned through Ranella is that at the founding of this country in the early days, the richest man in the world was selling beaver pelts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the richest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Here at the Pleistocene.
Well, on the dinosaur bones.
So this beaver, giant beaver, enormous bear-sized beaver that lived in North America during the Pleistocene. Wow. So when did these die off? What year? What was the Pleistocene officially?
So about 13,000 years ago.
Could have been the same thing.
12,000 years ago.
Wow. So it probably died off with
during that same
American lion and all that other stuff. And you know the pronghorn. You know the whole story about that. Yeah. That's why they're so fast.
Oh, because of the American lion?
No, American cheetah.
American cheetah.
Like they're the last of these animals. They're a bizarre animal. Have you ever seen one in real life?
No, I've never seen one in real life.
I've only seen it through binoculars. I've never seen one, on the ground real close. I've only seen it from a few hundred yards away. But when you look at images of them, they have insane eyesight. They have almost 360-degree vision. Their eyes are on the side of their heads.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
And they can run 55 miles an hour.
That's
and the
amazing.
reason why they can run so fast is because they were getting chased by cheetahs that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So the cheetahs died off in the Younger Dryas impact theory or whatever happened. But these pronghorn antelopes remain, and there's nothing like them in terms of speed.
That's awesome.
Like, it's really bizarre because they're a remnant of an older past,
right? Where
they had to be that fast to avoid the predators, but the predators are gone. They remain.
Yeah, so can anything catch them now?
Nothing. Once they're done, once they're grown, good fucking luck. They have insane eyesight. But one of the ways that people hunt them, they're really dumb. One of the ways people hunt them is on horsebacks. Like, that dog has zero chance. Yeah. But the cheetahs were chasing these motherfuckers down. So it's like another, different kind of antelope. But a super fast, they're quite a bit faster, I bet, than these antelope. They're crazy fast. There's nothing like them in North America.
That's awesome.
But the vision that these things have, give me a photo of one of their heads, pronghorn's eyes. They're so weird looking. They look archaic. Like if you see their face, they don't look like it looks like they're from another time. It looks
like from a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, they look like they're from another time.
Yeah,
and they are.
They're literally on the side there.
Yeah, this is what would have been so amazing to look at what the Earth looked like. 12,000 years ago.
It is cool. Like
America.
Like to your point, when you travel and you go to these different places where you have that are truly more remote, right? And I'm not just talking about Yellowstone, but when you've said going to Kruger National Park or looking at some of these places in Africa, when you go to Central Tasmania, it's almost like a weird Disney movie. Like at dusk, you've got echidnas running around and you've got wallabies jumping through. Wow. And they all just come through, and you're like. It's like that scene in Ace Ventura, right, where he sings and everything fucking comes to him. And I remember the first. I was like, this isn't real. Are these animatronic? There's no way there's this much life and biodiversity. And it was all just the echidnas are running, the wallabies are jumping. You've there's there's all these weird, dumb animals that are just excited. They're so strange to us, right, in terms of like how we think about them because you never see them. But then there's just like this insane plethora of them. They're just so many. It's crazy.
Well, I wonder what would be different had the thylacine survived.
So they say
that was kind of the only thing that was.
It was the only apex predator for Tasmania and Lower Australia. And have you seen a Tasmanian devil in person?
Not in person.
They're awesome.
They look cool as shit.
They're cool as shit. They're awesome. They eat in these little packs. And the reason why they call them Tasmanian devils is because they make the weirdest. I mean, they make sound. If I heard the sounds that they make, if you're out in the woods and you hear that sound, you're like, this is Sasquatch. This is crazy.
They're crazy.
Yeah.
See if we can hear some.
Referred to Tassies as bear devils due to this superficial resemblance.
A little cute face.
If you find them eating, they just sound terrible.
Find Tasmanian tiger noises.
I don't think we know what they make.
Or excuse me, Tasmanian devil noises. Sorry, not.
Have you seen this video though?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can go to that in a second too. I just want to hear this. Look at that fucker. Look at his face.
But
so cool.
And so they're part of the reason why they're. But that isn't that terrifying.
You know they
heard
give
that
each
at
other
night?
cancer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And many of the researchers in Tasmania and Australia think that if the thylacine was there, because this is where people give wolves and thylacines and predators bad, but they go after there's an energy expenditure ratio, right? They're not just sitting there grazing. They're not getting sedentary. They have to go make the kill. They have to decide, I'm going to go kill stuff. So they kill the young, so they're thinning out the weakest. They kill the old, then they kill the sick. An environment that has the right balance of predator and prey is a healthier ecosystem, including for those prey species.
Right.
And all data that we've seen on the thylacine suggests that they actually ate kind of that mezzanine level of marsupials. And so many people believe that the facial tumor disease would not, if you've seen, I don't know if you saw it, it's disgusting.
It's really gross.
Yeah. But that
What is that? What are we looking at here? Oh, feeding frenzy?
Yeah, it's like a
Oh,
360
give me some
video.
volume. It's doing it right in front of people too,
Yeah,
which
it's-
is
yeah.
crazy.
They might be talking all the time. Yeah.
I fed them like this. It's crazy.
Here they
They're
go.
just not scared.
Watch
No,
how
they don't even-
fast they
you-
are capable
you
of
just-
consuming
they're like
this meat.
piranhas of the
These
world.
are Tasmanian devils, the only carnivorous marsupial that we have ever featured on camera. And next to Tasmanian,
It's so cool that they're not
Is that
even
coyote?
remotely scared of people.
Yeah, they don't even notice you're there. It's crazy. So if you feed them like this, you can put a piece of
Whose
a
video
wallaby.
is this, Jamie?
Coyote Peterson's.
Yeah, Brave Wilderness is
Oh,
the
okay.
channel.
Look at these little fuckers go.
And then they just make these sounds, but they often get into fights, and that fighting
Oh, yeah, they're fighting
is
right
when
there.
that's when they do the transmission.
oh, right in the middle of the devil fight.
No, I mean like
But they literally scratch and bite each other, and then they transmit this. It's the only transmissible cancer that we know of. So
Yeah.
then it latches onto the next face through biting, and and if you see an animal with a Tasmanian devil with the facial tumor disease, and you see them like they can't walk well, they can't really see well. Those are the animals that would be picked up by predators first.
Right.
And so there's a big movement within Tasmania and lower southern Australia that if we could reintroduce a predator, being the thylacine, it would eat.
Ugh.
Oh, I can't even look.
Oh God,
It's rough.
we're looking for people listening. We're looking at tumors on Tasmanian devils' faces.
Yeah, they're just terrible.
I mean, that was a perfect inspiration for a comic book character or for a cartoon
Yeah, yeah.
character, rather. The Tasmanian
Yeah, Tasmanian devil. Yeah,
He was amazing.
I mean, they're like they'll be sitting there not making those sounds. They start eating or they get threatened, and they make those death sounds. It is a terror because if you've never heard it before in person, it just catches you by surprise and it like blows you away. So it was a pretty weird experience first time I did it.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
That's such a cool little animal. So the idea of ultimately eventually releasing thylacines, how would that be done, and what kind of study would have to be done? Because you're talking about all these
Yeah.
animals that come out. Look at all the animals. That probably won't be the case if you reintroduce thylacines.
No.
They'll start.
They will start
thinning it out, and it'll
they'll separate.
achieve a balance.
Yeah, it'll achieve
So
a
they've
balance.
done a lot. Let's just like keep people up to date on Australia. Most people don't know that they've introduced cats. So house cats. You want some water?
Yeah, I got some
It's right there. They introduce house cats, like just feral house cats in Australia, to combat certain species. And they start decimating all the other species.
It's literally the worst. It's literally the #1 mammalian extinction rate is in Australia due to cats.
And it's because it's an invasive species. Would that be a problem? Would there be a similar problem if you reintroduce the Tasmanian tiger? Would there be potentially? Would you have to reintroduce other species if they make them extinct? Like,
so
the cascade.
The good news about the Tasmanian in the southern Australia ecosystems is they're mostly intact, right? Hopefully they'd eat the cats. If you talk to most people in Australia, they hate cats outside of the cats that they actually own.
Yeah.
They actually hate cats because of what they're doing to small marsupials. They're actually looking at technologies like gene drives and others to fully eradicate cats that are wild, non-domestic cats.
Yeah, people hunt them.
Yeah, people hunt them.
Like I have a good buddy of mine, Adam Greentree, and they have this magazine. It's like a bow hunter magazine in Australia, and he gave me a copy of it. I was reading it on a plane, and this guy's holding up a dead cat. He shot with a bow and arrow. I'm like, hey, man, like what the fuck? Are you know, they hold them up like trophies.
Well, because it's a huge problem, right? It goes back to the invasive species. One of the projects that we're working on with the Thylacine, because we like to pair every de-extinction with the species preservation, is: have you ever seen a northern quoll?
No, what is that?
Northern quoll. It kind of looks like a mink or like a ferret, but way prettier. It's amazing.
How do you spell it?
Quoll. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. They're absolutely. I mean, their coats are beautiful, but they're another type of carnivorous marsupial. But 100 years ago or so, we as humanity introduced cane toads. Have you ever seen a cane toad? It's like the Jabba the Hutt. I mean, it looks fucking evil, right?
They're monsters.
And so we as humanity introduced cane toads into Australia, and they have a neurotoxin. Well, guess what? Most quolls and small marsupials love to eat frogs and toads. And so this is actually, I think, about our work. This actually is about our work. And so I think this is part of our work. And what we've done is, if you go back to your point about co-evolving and evolution, if you go back to to South America, where cane toads evolved along snakes and mice and other small mammals, they eat cane toads all day long, and they don't die of the neurotoxin. They don't completely stroke out and die, which is what happens in northern Australia. And so the cane toads they reproduce in an insane rate. They're having thousands of babies. They're making more and more of them. So guess what? More and more quolls and others are eating these cane toads and dying. So what we did is we actually did a study where we understood what are the genes in the mammals and snakes even in South America that make them cane toad toxin resistant. And here's what we found. This is amazing. One letter in 3.5 billion base pairs. So a one letter change had no other had no other effects that were negative, and it created a 5,000 times resistance to cane toad.
Wow.
So because quolls are endangered, and we don't want to work in endangered species first, you want to start with a more model species. We worked in the fat-tailed dunart, which is our model species for the Thylacine, and we engineered dunart cells and dunarts that can eat cane toad tissues and has zero effect on them, where it would typically kill them. And so now we're in the next phase of trials, showing that we like to engineer in this one edit into quolls, because if quolls would have most likely, through this concept of convergent evolution, if you would have put the quoll next to the cane toad, they would have co-evolved together. They probably would have had that resistance already built into them through nature.
Wow.
And so that's showing the power of this concept of genetic engineering in biotech in conservation. And so then you could make these super quolls that eat the cane toads, and then not only does that help the population, lower the population of cane toads, it has this and help the population of the quolls, but it also has a halo effect to all these other marsupials that we don't know how many are dying from eating cane toads.
I hope you don't have to bring in big toads to eat the quolls. If it get, you know what I'm saying?
Have you seen those toads and frogs that like latch out and like they'll eat anything in front of them?
Yes.
Yeah, they're terrifying.
Yeah, I've seen
there was a giant one of those toads back in like I don't know, thousands of years ago.
How big was it?
I don't know. I've seen a 3D render of it, and it like grabs like deers and stuff. It's crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We've played videos of toads eating mice. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Before I saw those videos, only a few years ago, I had no idea toads would just eat mice.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So they put them in this bin with a bunch of mice, and this toad is just going ham, just snatching mice up and swallowing
and
them.
it'll just and you'd think that they're just sitting there docile, and then they just absolutely they throw their whole
Well, they
bodies at
sit
it.
there. They have the creepiest dead eyes. They're just machines to eat. You ever seen them fight with each other? That's pretty wild too. They bite each other's heads and they throw each other through the air.
Yeah, I've seen them toss each other.
Imagine you're fighting with a dude and he literally bites half your torso and throws you through the air, and they don't even look like it bothered them.
Yeah,
they
that's just part of the fight. That's totally like within the rules.
That's what creeps me out about reptiles. There's this lack of emotions. Like at least a wolf has emotions. You know, it's like there's something going on there. There's an intelligence. There's something really creepy about getting eaten by something stupid.
Like a crocodile.
Yeah. Like a crocodile or like a toad. There's a thing about crocodiles that people were suspecting, but it turns out to not be true. That they would lie on their back and put their arms in the air to simulate drowning.
Yeah, I saw that video.
Apparently that's not what they're doing. Apparently that's a normal characteristic that they do.
But from a natural selection perspective, stupid people were like, I have to save them.
I gotta go save that dude.
And then we credit the crocodile for being super smart, but in reality, it just got a free meal.
Yeah, well, you would think though, if they have gotten those meals before, that would be a learned behavior. I mean, it just makes sense. They do have some learned behavior. I have a friend. His name is Jim Shockey. He's a professional hunter, and he was actually hired to go into Africa and hunt crocodiles that were killing all these people in this village. Like they're actively targeting people in this village.
Yeah.
And when he went to the village, everybody was like missing a foot, had a chunk taken out of their leg. And while he was there, a crocodile took a woman who was washing clothes. So what they had done was they'd set up this area by the water where they had driven these stakes in the ground that would prevent the crocodiles from getting in the water and getting really close to the edge. Because you can't see them in the water, and then they just explode out and snatch you up.
Yeah.
These fucking crocodiles went around the fence. They walked around the fence and slid into the water. So they figured out that these people are in this area that they can't get to, so they hunt people.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And it's weird how some of those it's very strange as we start to study, because like one of the things that Colossal is doing is we're studying a lot of what's called non-model species. So we're learning a lot about weird things that we just didn't know. There's some things that are known, like elephants get cancer a fraction of what they should due to an overexpression of a gene called P53. So there's this thing called Peto's paradox where based on age and body weight, both blue whales and elephants get cancer a fraction of what they probably should based on how old they get and what their body size is. And that actually makes our lives very difficult, and that's why we had to create stem cells for elephants, because anytime we had to figure out how to regulate P53, because anytime you go to edit that one cell, it just says looks like a mutation, could be cancer, kill cell, right? It's like programmed in. So we had to be able to turn that down, because we're in the editing phase on the Mammoth project, right? So there's about 85 genes.
But if you turn that down, does that make them more susceptible to cancer?
And so you got to turn it back up after you make the edits. So
whoa.
Yeah, so these are the things that we are learning.
I'm with that lady doctor, that lady scientist. You guys are doing something you shouldn't be doing.
No, we're learning about things, right? We're learning about things, right?
I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. If I was her, I would probably have the same opinion.
Yeah.
I'd probably say, especially if I found out you guys weren't really scientists. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Well, I mean, the good news about Colossal is that, outside of our 17 academic partners and our 95 scientific advisors, 90% of the company scientists. There's very few. I fall in the very few.
I'm kind of kidding about you're not scientists, but
I'm definitely not a scientist.
I'm not kidding about the technology getting into someone else's hands.
Yeah,
and this is where it gets weird. Like China, Russia,
it is getting weird. Like CRISPR and these genome engineering tools are outside of the bottle. They're out. It's like the genie out of the bottle, right? It's like it's out there. You can't put it back in. I think that more and more people in other countries are going to be doing things with these technologies for humans. That's why Colossal just said, we will never do anything for humans. If someone else wants to use our technologies for humans, we'll evaluate it.
But that gets so weird, right? Like the China story. You can explain to people what they did. They said they were inoculating them from HIV, which is
They actually were
suspect.
engineering. They were engineering babies and in editing their embryos to confer a resistance to HIV. Now, still to this day, so they were cloning them, and then they were genetically modifying them. And so they're doing lots of things there's a general moratorium in the world on some of these things around humans. Anything that's considered a germline edit. So anything that could be passed on to the next generation, right? So if you engineer something into the genome, the fear is, from a germline. So all your cells in your body are somatic cells, except for your like egg or sperm. Those are germ cells. So anything that could be affected into the germline, so that you pass it on to the next generation, that could be like, umbrella corporation type moment, right? So we don't want that.
Well, the scary thing was they didn't just do that. They also edited something that would allow the child to have much higher intelligence.
Well, so that part's like that part's quoted under debate. There's people that say that happened. There's people that say it doesn't happen. If you look at BGI, or Beijing Genomics Institute, right? They did this thing that, from a nefarious perspective, was brilliant. From a nefarious perspective, is also terrifying. During COVID, they're like, we'll do all the COVID testing for you for free. We'll do all this COVID testing for you for free. No worries. Just send us your data. We'll do it all for free. You just want to help the world, right? We'll work with the World Health Organization. Just send us all your samples from all your countries, everything. And publicly, the CEO of BGI has said, which is funded by the CCP, has said that they are looking at genes with humans. They are looking at what makes humans more intelligent. They don't shy away from this. This is not like some conspiracy like theory, like is it a Sasquatch or is it just a man in an ape suit? This is something that is very real. They are openly saying we are sequencing as much as we can of the world population, looking for genes for intelligence, and we will act on that. Like that's not a hidden thing. So that is the problem.
But they supposedly did with these children. How old are these kids now?
I mean, that would have. When did that happen? It was. Yeah, so they've been like 6 or 7.
Oh, and are they already winning chess championships?
Yeah, so we
should find out.
Yeah,
we should find out where these kids are probably in a lab somewhere with a headset on.
Yeah,
teaching them how to be psychic.
I don't know how public it's like. 'Cause it was also one of those weird things that was like, he's in trouble, he's going to jail.
Yeah,
and then he got
out,
and then he's out.
Yeah,
all
is
forgiven.
Guy.
Yeah,
but meanwhile, if you go to jail in China, you fucking vanish.
Forever.
Yeah,
except for this guy.
You're making iPhones until you drop dead of starvation.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And so it is weird that like he got in trouble for a few months.
Right. And he got in trouble for something they probably told him to do in the first place.
Well, they funded his lab. His lab was funded by the
And this
party.
is what we found out about. I guarantee you there's some shit that they're doing somewhere that we haven't found out about yet. And if you were going to do something with human beings and create a super soldier, we know that
well, that's what
Russia,
separates us. That separates us.
What Russia was attempting to do during, was it World War I or World War II? They were trying to make a chimpanzee-human hybrid for war.
Oh, I saw that. I read about that. Yeah.
A chimp-human hybrid for war.
Well, there's been a recent publication out of Japan where they're allowing Japanese scientists to edit human cells in embryos with mammalian genes, with other mammalian genes.
Like what kind of genes? Like woolly mammoth genes in a person?
No, we are not doing that. People ask us if we could solve hair loss with woolly mammoths.
That would be the first thing people want.
Yeah.
Hair loss. Next thing, bigger dicks.
Yeah, those are consistent.
Well, you can't
questions.
engineer once a person's already born, right?
Well, you
with
can't,
the current technology.
With the current technology, like so being able to send stuff to specific gene therapies and targeting it, being able to deliver specifically to cells is an area that we're getting better at. I think one of the projects that's the furthest along is around like sickle cell anemia. It's a single CRISPR knockout, right? So it's a single knockout. It's not multiplex editing. And now it's about, can you target that in all of the tissue types that are the most affected? And then over time, how do you deliver that gene therapy to everything?
And you could do that to a person who's already born?
To someone that's already born. It's obviously much easier to do it at the embryo stage.
Could you envision a world where the gene editing technology becomes so powerful that you could do it to a person who is already fully formed?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
This is what I predicted. Everyone's going to look like Thor.
it's
going to be a bunch of Chris Hemsworth and Jason Momoas, and no more people look like you and me.
Yeah. Wait.
over,
so
bro.
Chris is one of our investors, and I always think we look just like each other.
Oh, yeah.
So he
For
invited
sure.
Luke invited me to go to
If I was
Byron.
from another planet, I think a different species is.
Yeah, they invited me to go up to Byron Bay and go surfing with them, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go take my shirt off next to you nerds. That's exactly what's never gonna happen. And I just made up an excuse of why I couldn't go because they were like, we want to go surfing, and I was like, yeah.
Sure you do. You want to
Yeah, I'm not going surfing with you two.
measure cocks too?
Yeah, I was like,
what are you
I'm
trying
going,
to do?
I'm going as far away from you with my shirt off as possible.
But you got to imagine if that becomes a reality. Like what we're doing today just with plastic surgery.
Yeah.
Right? Like let's take
Or
South
the
Korea, for
GLP-1s.
example. Yeah, GLP-1s, but that's achievable, right? What GLP-1s are doing is achievable through hard work.
Yeah.
But like what they're doing in South Korea with eye surgery, like
Yeah.
it's ubiquitous. Like so many people are getting this weird surgery where they have these K-pop eyes.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a strange thing.
It's a strange thing. And if that's just primitive cutting and sewing tissue artistically, right? But if people can decide what they're going to look like, what their intelligence is going to be like,
Yeah,
like,
it's a eugenics
now
world.
we're really playing God.
No, that's playing God to another level, right? And that's this eugenics world where we know, right? Like I just had a child, and typically, I'd say if you go through the IVF process, which we went through, you typically can test for certain types of issues like along the pregnancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when they put the embryo in, they look at kind of the morphological grade. Well, now there's new companies out there, one of which I use, which after I used it, I was so impressed, I invested in it, called Orchid Health. And they actually take cells from the developing embryo on the very outer derm, right, on this thing that doesn't affect the embryo development. They culture those cells, and then they're doing full genome sequencing, right? And so we had a handful of embryos, and so not selecting, they don't let you to select for like eye color or height or anything. But outside of the kind of the core, is there a mental issue or is it compatible with life, which is what most people test for, you can now ethically and transparently go figure out, does it have any predispositions to certain things, right? So like, if diabetes or certain types of cancers or Alzheimer's rodents in your family, you can now get, a lot of that's environmental, but you can still get a distribution score so you can understand what are the genetic factors in that. So that's today. So that's not like 20 years in the future. That's not Gattaca. That's today. Wow. And I mean, we did that because I found out during that sick period that I have a gene mutation which affects the Titin gene, and I create a truncated protein. So I am more susceptible to diseases, including the first true round of COVID that was a lab leak that attacked my heart. Wow. And so I didn't want to be able to pass that on. So we screened for that, right? But that's not a standard thing. So, but that's a today thing. Like 2 years ago, that technology existed and is now prevalent and people are using it.
So you understand the technology better than most. Conceivably, what could be done that would, in the future, allow people to change their very shape and it literally like change everything about them, change their intelligence, change everything?
I think it starts with neural enhancers, and I think and this is the biological perspective. This is not even the computer brain interfaces merging with AI, that whole world, which I think that world has a lot of traction and is scarily getting a lot of traction pretty quickly. But I think it starts with things like health span, where it's like the very vain stuff. So like skin elasticity, hair. All of that, eye color, I think all of that is changeable, and not in like there's a company right now, I forgot the name of it, that spun out of Harvard that is making patches using microneedling patches that you can't even feel the needles, right? And delivering a custom stem cell for you that can help like replace your melanocytes for hair and for skin. Wow. And so you can have 30-year-old looking skin when you're 85 years old.
What?
Yes. So, and the same thing for hair, right? The reason why our hair
that's going to be real soon.
Yeah, that's the speed of which I think the two biggest barriers for healthcare around genetics and longevity is going to be the FDA process and not the technology. I think it'll be a process problem. We saw that with Operation Warp Drive, right? We saw how fast things could move if people really wanted them to. So I think that's number one, and I think that you're going to have the ethical pushbacks on this.
So regulatory and ethical, those are the two hurdles. But right now the technology exists.
Yeah. Well, the other biggest thing, and this is kind of for the folks that are deep in longevity, they'll tell you the biggest issue with longevity is that it's not currently classified as a disease state.
Right.
It's just, and so they're not getting NIH funding.
Right.
They're getting all that funding is going to other random stuff. But people aren't focusing on longevity. That's why you've got, like, if you've seen anything that like Bob Nelson's done. Bob started Arch Ventures, and he's like arguably the number one biotech in the world, and he's working on epigenetic reset, so resetting your clocks at a cellular level. That's what Jeff Bezos and them have. They're doing it at Altos Labs. George Church has another company called Rejuvenate Bio. They're doing the same things, and they're smart. They did it in dogs first because people love dogs, and they can also collect a lot of data that then they can then apply to clinical trials.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of people cloning their dogs now.
Yeah, there's people that are cloning their dogs. They can do it even easier now with this.
Yeah, I didn't bring Marshall to the studio.
We did clone one person's dog.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I love him too much. I couldn't do it. I would feel so weird around this fake Marshall.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. And that's how people feel about it. Some people
dogs are unique little creatures. They have their own little personalities. And
I know. I've got two, and they're amazing. And my wife is closer to one. And so I did just full disclosure. We did do a blood sample on that one just because I just don't know what the meltdown could look like. But the other one we haven't. And so, because you're right, that you have environmental factors, you have personalities, we don't understand all of that.
Right.
But I won't say who it is, but someone that's very well known in the world. When I was showing him some of our direwolf and redwolf tech, his kids were devastated because his dog was dying, and they didn't want to put her in any harm. They didn't want to go to one of these dog cloning companies and do like ear. They didn't want to put it to sleep. They didn't think she'd wake back up. So we did a blood draw. He called me over Christmas or before Christmas last year, and told me that that they think the dog's got days to weeks to live. Could we do it for her? And we did it for him. We're not in that business. That's not our business. But he was just happy because his choice wasn't, he didn't want this other dog, or his family didn't want another dog. His biggest issue was they couldn't let go of that dog, number one. And number two, but they didn't want that dog to suffer. They didn't want to say, for our selfish means,
right,
you're already suffering. We want you to go be put to sleep and have pieces taken out, like Frankenstein pieces of you. And so the fact that we could just take a blood draw, the dog didn't even notice we took the blood draw. I was like totally awake, just sitting right there while we did it. And he was happy with that. So I think these.
What if that dog is going to be reincarnated into a higher level of existence, and you stop it and put it on this
Yeah. So that's not exactly our business. So
you know what I'm saying?
I do. It's all
we
weird.
don't really exactly know what life is.
No, we don't. We definitely don't know life. And here's one thing that his assistant told my chief of staff. He said to her, he's like, what's weird? I didn't think it was the same dog at all, and it's definitely not the same dog. But he's like, it goes and sits in the same place, which isn't like, it's not like in front of a window on its bed, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know the exact place, but it would always go sit in the exact same place the other dog sat. So there's weird stuff. We don't understand this.
That would creep me out.
It would creep me out too.
Because Marshall has very specific places where he sleeps.
And if that happens, it
would creep me out.
Yeah. So
I've had other dogs stay at my house. I had my older daughter's dog stay at my house, and that dog didn't go to that same spot. It's not like this is one spot that's warmer or cooler.
Yeah, like it's the same thing. It's like my dog Ken. If he gets on, he only wants to sleep on my feet. If I fall asleep on the couch, he's cool. He won't sleep on my feet. He just wants to sleep on me, and that's not comfortable for him because I'm kicking him and everything. But that's just where he wants to sleep.
They want to be in contact with you. My dog watches TV with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
They're the best.
Yeah, and we didn't even teach it this, but when we say security at our house, our dogs just lose it. Like Ken just loses his mind, and he just runs to the door. He runs the front door, runs the back door, runs the side doors. Yeah.
What kind of dog?
They're just mutts. So I have Barbie and Ken. They're just two little weird mutts.
Dogs
but we named them before the movie.
It's just a weird thing to take that dog, and I think also for kids, the thing is kids, the loss is so devastating.
Yeah. But it's also good to teach them those things.
Yeah, I think loss is important.
Yeah.
I think loss is important.
I don't want to, I'm new to this whole father thing, but I think it's important that they understand that there's real things and there's consequences to decisions, and we're going to age and we've got a limited time. I think that in his lifetime it will be massively accelerated. But I think that's important. And, that is one of the things, though, I think having a kid, and also all of these kids and parents that have been sending us pictures of mammoths and thylacines and dodos and hopefully now direwolves is something that's exciting, because we get these handwritten notes from kids, right? So like on our shittiest day at Colossal, when someone says whatever or whatever, and we get, or an experiment doesn't work or whatever bad happens, and you look at this pile of kids' photos and teachers, like we have there's a teacher named Katie from Florida who sent us a letter and literally like 40 pictures of mammoths. And in that letter she goes, my kids won't be quiet. We're in this like attention war with everything. My kids won't be quiet. I start talking about Colossal. I show the woolly mouse stuff. They all want to just talk about it. They just zone in, right?
Because it's interesting.
It's interesting. And kids, and so I think this is a time that we can use technologies for human health care for good. We can use technologies for conservation for good. And we can help ecosystem with bringing back extinct species. But I think that we can also like inspire the next generation. Like, don't we want to preach hope? We're on this 24/7 psycho news cycle, right? Like that wasn't around when I was a kid. Or
do you know C.S. Lewis first started talking about this? Like what year was C.S. Lewis alive? But he had a quote about, I might have saved it. He had a quote about just getting all the dire information of the world
all the time
sent to you all the time, which at his time back then, that was very new. That was a completely new thing.
And this idea of these 24-hour news cycles, right? Like there's actually a law in the UK. This blew my mind. There's a law in the UK that they cannot report on a piece if it has any degree of social impact that they don't tell the negative side. I was like, so what happens if it's like, so if there's someone saves a kitten from a tree, you have to get the dog's perspective? Like, it's like, and they're like, yes. And they're dead serious.
Oh, that's so ridiculous.
So it's like there can be stories that are just negative and there can be stories that are just positive. That's okay.
Yeah, I think you're going to have very lively debate. That's always going to happen with something that's so groundbreaking like what you're doing. But I also think it's inevitable. I think human beings have this inescapable desire for innovation.
Right.
And it's going to apply to biology just like it applies to electronics. And you can't do anything about it. You can have debates about it, and we should. What you guys are doing is great. You've got the direwolves fenced off, and you're very careful, and you're monitoring them. It's great. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And at least you're transparent about it.
Yeah.
Like, at least this is not happening in Russia where they're making super wolves that only eat Americans.
Yeah, and they train them with DNA to only eat
but
Americans.
That's probably going to happen too. This is just we're going to face unique problems no matter what we do, because technology is allowing people to do things that are unprecedented, including change what it means to be an actual person.
Yeah, it's synthetic biology, and really kind of the intersection between compute, AI, and synthetic biology, being able to engineer genes, engineer life. I think that we're at the doorstep of, everyone's very, very worried about AI. But I do think that synthetic biology is in that camp. I think it's like discovering fire.
It's the God camp.
Yeah.
It's all falling into the same thing. And then when you add to that incredible computing power that's going to be available with quantum computing.
Yeah.
And then you have new technologies that are going to emerge from AI using quantum computing. Like
then the interface of it all, like the Neuralink stuff and everything. It's just going to get, the
interfaces are crazy, because we had that gentleman Noah, the first guy who got it, and he said he has an aimbot in his head. So like when he plays games, he's like got a crazy advantage, because where he looks is where the cursor goes.
Yeah,
like instantaneously, so he could shoot things like he's not going to miss.
Yeah, I mean we are living in a weird time.
Yeah, it's the weirdest time. It's the weirdest time that people have ever been through, and we're at the door. We haven't even gone into the
That's what I say
great
about
wild.
That's what I say about synthetic biology, right? So like the ability to like engineer drought-resistant crops, or a vaccine, or regrow our hair, or make mammoths. That's today. We can't even think about what's tomorrow. We spun out a company from Colossal called Breaking last year, and this incredible group at the Wyss Institute discovered an enzyme from the Amazon that actually breaks down any type of plastic you give it to. And not making smaller plastics, not making microplastics, which are fucking terrible, but actually breaks the chemical. That's why I need it breaking. It actually breaks the chemical bonds of plastic and just produces biomass as the thing. Well, guess what? So it takes things that have broken down never and has got it down into years. We have used now computational biology and synthetic biology to engineer it so now that it's in 22 months. And I think that we can get it down to 2 weeks. And so that will be huge for the plastic problem, because we can all say that we're going to change hearts and minds and use different types of plastics, but we still have the existing plastics here. And we have to do something about it. So I do think there's even industrial use cases coming out of synthetic biology that, like 10 years ago, if someone said, we can give you a magic microbe that you can put in a vat and you can just throw any of your plastics in there and you can throw, salads and other stuff there and it won't even touch it, that would have sounded like science fiction.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
That's so crazy. And so now you said it's down to a couple months?
Yeah, it's 22 months right now. So, and we're talking about like not just like your
water bottle,
but you're also talking about things that are like industrial defense plastics that are like, radiation hardened and whatnot for space. Like we're throwing some pretty hard stuff at it.
What about those stupid fucking windmills that they have to change every few years?
And they actually have a
landfill
bigger,
for windmills.
And they also have a bigger negative carbon impact than they make. Yeah.
And they don't barely make any electricity.
Yeah. They kill livestock, or they kill animals, kill birds. They disrupt
whales.
They also disrupt migratory patterns of birds.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
So, you can't fly into that.
Yeah, and they're all made with plastic and plastic polymers.
And then they have to get rid of them. And then the only place to put them is in a landfill.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why we started breaking. So
wow. So these microbes would be able to break that down.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't tested on that specific, but like one of the biggest ones that we tested on was nylon, just because there's so much. If you look at like what's in the ocean, a vast majority of it is nylon from just discarded fishing nets.
Oh, that makes sense.
So we looked at nylon as one of our first use cases, and then we're doing water treatment plants and a few others. So if we get to the point that we could do filtration on microplastics at the treatment level, right? Because all that's passing through right now, like in our drinking water and everything. That's why you have to have these massive. You have to have like the 3-layer osmosis devices and whatnot for water. You've got to do. Gary got me a new water machine. So, but you have to do those types of things because the microplastics and then the chlorine and other stuff still passes through a lot of the existing materials.
So when you're doing this, is this something that you could release like in the ocean itself, or would you have to worry then about the effect, like bringing the house cats to Australia?
No, it dies. It only eats this like
this is what they always say right before it fucks up. Don't worry about it.
But with the distribution in the wild of something like that, you have to go through EPA. There's a lot of testing that you have to do, right? So
but you could do that testing and then conceivably dump it on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
So I don't know, based on heat and salinity and whatnot. Right now, it's working in bioreactors, so I don't want to overpromise and say we could just go sprinkle it and call it a day. But that's the long-term goal, right?
Wow.
So, but that's the power of we used AI and computational analysis of this microbe that's found in nature, and then we said let's supercharge it, just like supercharging the quolls, right? And so, but the process of using it outside of contained systems like a bioreactor has to be done very thoughtfully and measured, just like rewilding, right? It's like this is where sometimes people get confused about like the Yellowstone stuff. They didn't just open the gate and throw some wolves in there. I mean, it sounds like they did more of that in Colorado, but there's typically a very thoughtful and measured process that you have to go through, right? Because there's intended consequences, which you get excited about, but then there's a shit ton of unintended consequences if you're not careful.
Yeah.
But synthetic biology is that it's an AI level thing that we need to be worried about.
And how many different nations are working on this stuff?
So I think that the U.S. is by far the most advanced from a synthetic biology perspective. It is a major directive of China, not just sequencing and biobanking, because they're biobanking. We do not have a nationalized biobanking process here. That's one of the things I was meeting in Washington about. But China does. China is going, like we see them in Africa where they'll make donations to a university or a school and then say, oh, but we're going to take blood samples from all of your animals around here. You guys are cool, right? So they are doing this, right? So they're looking for insights in animals. They're looking for that data. They're also trying to build like today's Noah's Ark. And so China is for sure. There's some countries it's harder, like the European Union's harder to do anything because they've kind of put a moratorium on GMOs or genetically modified organisms. But we've been making GMOs for a long time. Like, have you ever seen a pug? Like, we've just done it pretty inefficiently, right? We can be smarter and actually have a better understanding of those intended consequences now through AI and software.
Bro, people are going to have direwolves guarding their house.
No.
In 100 years?
They're not open to the public.
100%. They're going to get your technology, and they're going to sell it, and people are going to be eating woolly mammoth steaks while the direwolves guard their house.
Yeah, that's not the future that I hope for. I'm more of an optimist, so I kind of believe in the general good of humanity.
Of course, it's your company. Your company is fucking the whole world up. You have to think that way. I'm just kidding.
I know.
But it is weird. It's a weird venture. I mean, you're going down a very bizarre path, but it's so fascinating. I'm so glad you're doing it because it's so interesting.
And we're learning a lot, right? And the application of that learning could allow us to save many species, right?
Yeah.
And I think that...
Do you think there could ever be a time... Well, there's no DNA from the dinosaurs, right? So would it be possible that with future technology, there would be some way to get around that?
The closest you could get from a dino DNA perspective is that there is ways that you can do demineralization of bones and get amino acids. So like the smallest building blocks possible, you don't know where they go, right? I think that it's not possible to de-extinct a dinosaur. I do think at some point you could use AI and software to do an ancestral state reconstruction, looking at kind of what we know about birds, what we know about reptiles, and kind of where they branch.
So you could make one.
I think you could.
Wasn't that one of the things they did in Jurassic Park?
That's what they all
made
did.
A dinosaur that didn't exist before, the big giant one.
The Adominus Rex. Yeah.
Right. That was something they created.
That's
correct?
something they created, right? And so, I think from a technology and genome engineering perspective, that is eventually possible.
Ooh. So they could easily make a T-Rex
I wouldn't
without
say easily, yeah,
but they could
at some future state. At some future state, I think we'll have the CAD software of biology where you can engineer almost anything.
Oh my God!
I mean, that's just where the technologies go, right? The better, and you said it best when you brought up quantum. If quantum's only 2 years away, every 2 years I hear, but eventually when it works and works at scale, and you have that coupled with where some of these companies like X.AI and others are taking it, I think the merger of that plus synthetic biology will allow us to do all kinds of stuff. And it will be it will be in nefarious hands. Like let's just be real. Nuclear weapons are in nefarious hands, right?
Yeah.
Nuclear weapons are in good guys' hands, right? And so this is nuclear weapons. And I think that you have to be just because it exists, we can't put our head in the sand and say, oh, we just can't let it be because it does exist. And I don't know if you saw this, but this was like 5 years. No longer than that. It was like 7 years ago. People in China. Companies in China and the government in China were using facial recognition technology to profile people, right, of a certain subset of race, right? And they were doing bad things with facial rec. Well, the San Francisco government, where a lot of the funding comes from Silicon Valley for a lot of tech startups, they said, not at a nationwide level, but in Silicon Valley, San Francisco says we will not at all support any technology. We're going to ban investing in facial rec technology. Well, that's just dumb, right? Because we now know there's things like deepfakes and all this stuff, but it's like that's setting American innovation back because someone's doing something bad with it, right? That's like saying, oh my gosh, they have guns. We should never develop guns, right? Like it's a bad philosophy when it comes to technology. And so, I think the same way about synthetic biology. The world is currently the United States is the leader in synthetic biology, and we've got national treasures like George Church, my co-founder, and others. And I hope that we continue to be the world's leader. But I do think other countries have different ethical boundaries than we do, and they will experiment on kids.
But it's interesting also that you're a company. This isn't the government. This is just a group of people and investors that have decided to do this, and you've been able to do it here in America. But do you know what is going on in other countries, or is this a tightly guarded secret?
So I mean, we know
obviously you have people. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
you have
go for
people
it.
in your company as well, and I'm sure there's an understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's good. You must be being studied by other countries.
Yeah, we definitely, and we have investment by In-Q-Tel, right? So I'm sure that makes us more of a target. So
yeah.
So, I mean, we do work closely with the DoD and IC frequently.
It's just, when you think about it 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, when you scale this out, there's no limit to what could be done with life. That's so strange.
Yeah.
It's so strange to think that for 4+ billion years, life has evolved in a very specific pattern.
Just on rails.
Yeah. And then one day.
And now we say we can take the rail where we want.
Whoo, boy. And that's the grandest of all conspiracy theories is that's how humans were created.
Yeah,
that we were
the
engineered.
panspermia.
Either panspermia
or that we were engineered in places.
The great one is the Anunnaki, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the Sumerian
I will.
tech stuff.
But I will say that if you look at, not to get too weird, but if you do look at it's like Kukulkan Khan and folks in if you look at some of the carvings from all over the world resembling their sky gods, there's a lot of weird similar. I mean, you can't objectively. It's like the guy with the Sphinx, right? That's like, yep, that's water. I'm an expert on erosion. That is water. And then they're like, head of the Sphinx, like, that's not water, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as this. You cannot look at some of this stuff and say that's not weird, right? You can't look at like the incredible pyramids we have all over the world that seem to now there's like more and more discoveries, and then they get silenced out of you. It's like you can't see all that stuff and not wonder more, especially the stuff around. If you look at Mayans and then you look at stuff in the Middle East and how it looks exactly the same.
It's very weird.
It looks exactly the same.
Yeah,
Have you been to Peru?
No.
So that I would put, because I don't.
Picchu?
I do not want to take you away from going and visiting the boneyard. So you should totally do that. But you should also go to Peru. Peru, if you you can see Peru, and it's like standing in the Grand Canyon versus seeing it on Google Maps, right? If you go to like Ollantaytambo or whatever it's called, and you see these blocks that you can't put a piece of paper between. You can't see, and you see it, and they're all put together in a perfect jigsaw. Oh, and by the way, they came from a type of rock in a quarry that's 2,000 miles from here, or whatever, however many thousands of miles from here. You can't sit there and say, well, that's weird. If you don't say that's weird, then it's like you're like one of those people that are just like, huh.
You're a denier.
You can't say it's not weird.
Yeah, to say it's not weird is actually denying science.
Yeah, it's the weird. So you should put Peru on your, because when you see it, there's nothing like it. I've been fortunate and been able to travel over the world. You see it, and you're just like, that just doesn't make sense.
The coolest thing I've ever seen is Chichen Itza.
Yeah.
I've
been to Chichen Itza, yeah.
And you go there, and you're like, what did you do?
Yeah.
What did you do? How'd you do this?
Yeah.
How did you guys do this?
You know what's crazy about Chichen Itza? They don't let you go there anymore. But I don't know where, but you've got all those paths with all the vendors, and you see Chichen Itza. Well, there's, in the jungles there on the Yucatan Peninsula, there's actually other older pyramids. But the carvings that they have on Chichen Itza and the carvings they have there, they're actually, the older ones have more precise carvings. But now guess what? It's not open to the public. Yeah, I've seen that. I've been there.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. But
It's
it is such a weird world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking to you about like hardcore genetic science, but then when you start to look at all the craziness in archaeology, we don't know a lot.
A lot. Yeah. And there's no way you can know a lot.
And anytime you suggest something new, you get shit for it.
Yeah, you get a rash of shit, and people try to connect you with the worst people in the world. Hence Graham Hancock.
Yeah,
but
I think Graham Hancock in the end. I don't know if they're kind of this advanced civilization or whatnot, but I think really smart people said things like Plato and others that were probably real.
Yeah.
I don't think they were just like playing around and like, oh, we're going to write something that's going to be in history as a joke forever.
You've seen the Reichhardt structure? You ever seen that? This is what, there's a lot of people like Jimmy Corsetti, who's this famous YouTube, I guess you would call him, I guess he'd be like an
Can we pull
ancient,
up the structure?
Sure. He'd be like an ancient history enthusiast. He's a guy who's like studies these things and does YouTube videos on them. But the Reichhardt structure is essentially Atlantis.
Oh, this is in the desert.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks like Atlantis. There's salt all around it.
It has the rings that Plato described.
And at one point in time, it was connected to the ocean. I mean, it literally looks like Atlantis. And people dispute it. A lot of
Have
people
people gone and studied it there?
It's a very difficult place to get to, and it's also very dangerous. So people have studied it, but there hasn't been like large scale archaeological digs there or any. The whole sub-Saharan Africa thing is so fascinating.
Yeah.
They find whales there. I mean, they know that it was lush rainforest while human beings were alive.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been like large scale exploration of what's in that ground.
And and
it's immense.
I do think that the Younger Dryas stuff is also a combination of, I think generally speaking, if you break down the Younger Dryas period and that rapid cooling. I think the vast majority of people will say some of the destruction around megafauna was anthropologic, which I'll give it some percentage. Then I think a lot of people agree on this flood theory.
Anthropologic meaning human beings killed them.
Yes, that humans had some impact on it, right? I think that even more people agree that there was this massive flood that occurred, and that could have been a global level flood with sea rise and with rushing waters and sea rising whatnot. And then you've got what caused that flood, most likely astrological or meteorological.
And then they combine that with core samples that show large levels of iridium.
Yeah, which only exists when you have certain levels of heat at certain impact. It's like that. It's like that nuclear glass or whatever they find.
No, iridium is actually different. Iridium is actually very common in space, but rare
on
on Earth.
Yeah.
That's this.
And there's a layer. Yeah,
layer,
there's a silt of it.
Right.
That's right.
The micro diamonds is what you're talking.
But they have those too as well.
Trinitite.
Trinitite. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the stuff
Yeah.
from the Trinity explosion. They discovered it there. Yeah, they find these little micro. There's 100% there was impacts.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And they also know like when the meteors shower, and this is a thing that they study, like when we go through this comet shower, and that's.
But you remember like probably 10, 20 years ago, people, if you brought up the idea of a worldwide flood, they would just be like, oh, you're a fundamentalist Christian who can't talk to you ever again.
Exactly.
Right? Oh, water canopy, you're weird. Don't talk to me again.
I know.
And now it's like, well, maybe there was a giant flood. Maybe it wasn't just a regional flood, right? Maybe it was done by impact of comets, right?
That's what brings me to the weird ones when you go back to like the Vedic texts. And you're like, what was the Vimanas? What were these flying vehicles that they had? What was Ezekiel talking about in the Bible?
Have you seen that stuff have you seen those videos in the last, that have come out in the last year when there was the most recent UAP craze, and they'd show it and it looked like crazy ball lightning. It almost looked like those things that used to you'd put your hands on your hair and stand up, right? And then they'd compare some of those to paintings from 500, 700 years
Let me
ago.
stop you there, because a lot of those crazy balls of light
were all fake.
No, you can just zoom in on Venus.
Yeah.
And that's what you get.
Cool.
You zoom in on stars and you get this sort of bizarre, distorted image. Have you seen those? Find zoomed in stars. I think they did it with the North Star. They've done it with several stars. But if you zoom in with the highest level of these telephoto lenses from Earth, you can get that sort of distorted, weird effect. Because you're looking through the atmosphere.
I've always seen this stuff on the internet until I was in Wellington, New Zealand, when I was with Peter. Peter, his house in Wellington's like on a body of water, I won't say where, and we were talking, of course, like the conversation went to ghosts and UFOs, because like,
oh, you've seen
why
them?
not? No, I haven't seen them in person. I've seen them on his iPhone. Like this wasn't like a telescopic lens. This is an iPhone, and it looks exactly like what you see, I guess, on the zoom ins.
But that's the thing about zooming in. See, the thing is, like, these are planets that people have zoomed in on.
Yeah.
But there's weirder ones where, like, there's video of it, and so it looks like it's moving. Yeah, here we go. Like, look at that.
I'll have to see.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this is a perfect example. So this is a star in the night sky with a Nikon P900. So is that 900X, Jamie? No. What is that?
That's the model number.
Can you talk in the mic?
It's just the model number. I have no idea what that means.
So what would you think that the amount of...
I don't 10x, 100x. I have no idea.
Okay, but do you see how they're having a hard time zooming in on it, because this is it's a handheld, I think. But look how weird it is.
Looks so weird.
It's how it's moving around, like you say, oh my God, you found a UFO, but it's not. Yeah. It's just a star.
Well, I do hate that every UFO video is blurry.
Well,
or a star.
You know, I mean, that could be, if you want to get into the whole Hal Puthoff perspective, who's this brilliant physicist.
Yeah, he's on a lot of papers.
Yeah, he explained it to me. He thinks there's some sort of gravity distortion that's around it. So this is the camera.
Isn't that the...
This is that particular camera. So is this not a very...
No, it's like a handheld.
But isn't that...
So that's a $749 camera on Amazon.
83x optical.
So
I'll see if Peter will give me his... I'm sure he would, and I'll send it to you, because it's just weird to see.
Oh, they're weird. No, I'm not saying
this
they're not
this
real.
was like not zoomed in. His wife's next to him. And it's just weird stuff.
Not denying that people are seeing things, but I'm not denying that they're real. What I'm saying is, that kind of evidence of that star,
Yeah.
if you didn't know any better and someone
You'd-
sent it to you, oh my
you'd
God,
say
they
it's
found a
a
UFO.
UFO.
You'd be like, holy fucking shit, it's real. Look at that. It's undeniable. Look at the energy around it.
Yeah.
What Hal Puthoff believes is that there's some sort of distortion around these things
Yeah.
that's allowing them to be transmedium, to go through the ocean.
That's all the that's all their like 0 point energy and moving and in gravitational wave type stuff.
Do you go deep on this?
I get
You go down that
bored.
rabbit hole?
I get a little bored.
It gets boring because there's no real resolution.
Yeah.
You could lose your mind. But I had dinner with Jacques Vallée and Hal Puthoff once and a couple other gentlemen, and they were explaining the state of the technology, like what they think is currently available and what they think these things are using.
I did a call with Hal. I got into that crowd for a while, and before I started Colossal, and I knew a bunch of those folks. So I talked to Lou. I talked to Hal. I did a Zoom with Hal or
if
whatever.
you
Google
imagine
Meets with Hal.
what we are now, where we are, what you're describing in terms of technology that's emerging right now.
Yeah, we have direwolves today in 2025.
Yes. And now imagine this 5,000 years advanced.
Yeah.
And you're probably looking at that. If we are being visited, that's what you're probably looking at.
Yeah, it's not. And if you look at the exponential rate of our technology curve, it's not that far.
Now, imagine the monkeying that you guys have done with direwolves.
I wouldn't say it's monkeying.
It's a little monkeying
the selective precision genome engineering.
Amazing stuff you've done with direwolves. I'm just being silly. But imagine doing that to primitive hominids. Now, if you were an insanely advanced species from another dimension, another planet, whatever it is, and you're 1 million years more advanced than human beings, and you come down here and you see Australopithecus, trying to figure out how to make a spear.
Yeah.
And you say,
You're
let's put a little bit of this,
I
edit a little bit of that.
I told
put
you
a little
one
bit
edit
of ours in there.
one edit makes 5,000, confers 5,000 resistance to neurotoxin. So it's like a couple little edits here does a lot.
And then there's the other theory that what we're looking at is human beings from the future. And if
I
you
read
think about
that.
what's happening to human beings, we're becoming less and less stout and muscular, and we're becoming more and more we're less and less reliant
'cause we're
on
doing
muscle.
this all the time.
Yeah, and our heads are getting bigger.
Yeah.
That's them.
Yeah.
I mean,
I read that theory too.
It's a bizarre archetype, right?
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing that people keep seeing over and over and over again. It's very weird that there's a bunch of different versions of life that they allegedly see.
No,
But
I go down those rabbit holes because I just think once again going back to like the stuff of like Cuckoo Khan and Anunnaki and all this stuff. It's
the Anunnaki stuff the most interesting.
It's just so strange.
Yeah.
And how you have certain things that are aligned to celestial and you're like, yeah, but they could have picked a lot of constellations.
Yes.
Why did they all pick the Pleiades or whatever it is, right? Like why did they do that?
And also, how did the fucking ancient Sumerians have a detailed map of the solar system?
Insanely detailed.
From 6,000 years ago. How?
Yeah. And also be able to predict well enough of where it was going, knowing that we were moving through space.
Yeah. And also have these giant things with little monkey people on their laps.
Yeah.
Like, what are you saying?
Yeah. There's weird. The cool thing about this, but take a step back. Even though a lot of times people like Graham Hancock and others are ridiculed about it, and we get ridiculed even for the actual science that we're doing and proving every day. At the end of the day, it is still cool and it's interesting. Like I don't want to live in a society or a universe where everything's figured out. Every day is amazing, and we're figuring out amazing things.
Well, unlike you, I don't have the burden of being taken seriously. And that's great for discussing ridiculous.
But you can go explore. But that's awesome.
It is great.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's super interesting. But I think that's why so many people subscribe to your podcast is because 1 minute you'll talk to a comedian and a UFC fighter, and the next time you're talking to someone that knows more about like the ancient flood than anyone in the world. Yeah. And that's cool.
It is cool.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
Because we should have conversations.
Yes. And the world is filled with so many fascinating things that are all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible. I mean, and you can get lost, like we were talking about with the C.S. Lewis quote. Did you ever find that?
No, I couldn't.
He talked about getting the news. What year was C.S. Lewis alive?
1898.
Yeah.
I started tracking down like there's a bunch of misquoted C.S. Lewis quotes.
It could be one of those. It could be one of those.
Figure it out.
But we're being inundated by the worst news of the day because that's the news that's going to ensure that you watch it. And there's
Yeah.
so many cool things that are happening at the same time. And I think it gives people a distorted perception of the hope that we have for mankind. You hear about wars, like, oh my God, but most people aren't going to war. Most people are cool with each other.
Yeah.
Most interactions between human
Are
beings
positive.
are positive, and they're fascinating. And human beings are a fascinating creature, and we're so lucky to be alive at this time where the innovation is reaching this bizarre tipping point where we're,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I love it. I'm working more hours than I've ever worked in my life, and I've been fortunate before this business. And I will just tell you, I just love it. Every day I wake up, it's awesome.
That's so cool.
It's the coolest thing in the world.
well, I'm glad you're doing it, man. I really appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming in here and showing people the
Yeah.
direwolves and the red wolves. And I hope more. I
Yeah,
hope more.
we'll keep you
Please
up to
do.
date on fun stuff.
And I want to go see them. I want to see them.
All right, we'll talk offline.
Okay, we'll talk offline. Thank
right.
you very much. Oh,
Yeah.
if people want to find more information, find more about you,
It's just we're colossal.
colossal.com.
We're colossal.com, and we're it is colossal on YouTube and X and everything, and we're at colossal on X.
So fucking cool. Seeing that CGI one walking through the snow.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that one day.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, and I mean, look, the cool thing about Colossal is we have so many people that we have 170 people, over 135 scientists, just that wake up and they work 24/7. Like we've got 4 labs. People are just in love with it.
That's
so.
It's amazing.
It's
Thank
fun.
you very much.
You gotta come
Really
see the
appreciate
lab.
it. I will. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.